Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 6 o'clock. Calling to order the briefing session of Duncanville City Council, Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. The records show that we do have a quorum present at this point in time. First thing on the agenda for the briefing session is to discuss the agenda items. Mr. Hogan.
Thank you, Mayor. City Council, tonight on your consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes for the March 19th City Council regular meeting.
We have those in hard copy.
We have a hard copy. Slight update on the last part of it.
Yes.
So, and what's in your packet is correct.
Correct.
And that-
It was for the executive session. On the motion.
Item 4B is a resolution authorizing the award of a term bid for erosion control services to Knight Erosion Control. As you know, they are the contractor that we use for constructing bag walls for stormwater projects. We previously had a contract with them that expired in January of this year. We were in the renewal period for that contract. So we put bids out early this year for another 2-year term bid. Knight Erosion Control was the only one that responded. We had 23 vendors that viewed the bids, but then they were the only ones who responded. Our purchasing manager followed up with a number of the other companies to find out why they didn't submit bids, and all of them said that they could not perform the work at a lower price than what Knight was proposing. And that was also due to the low volume of our work. The item before you is to award a contract, a 2-year term contract for a total of $120,000, which is $60,000 per year, and that's typically what we budget for bag wall construction. And that program also is based on partnership with a homeowner, with a property owner, where it's 50% contribution from the property owner and 50% from the city. Those are all of the items on the consent agenda. On the individual consideration agenda, item 5A is a public hearing and ordinance amending the existing planned development or PD district for 212 North Hastings. This particular property, when it was first developed in 2015, the council approved an ordinance which rezoned the neighborhood retail zoning to a planned development. There are actually 3 parcels within that planned development. 2 of the parcels face West Jesperson Way. One of them is used as a bed and breakfast. The other one is a commercial property. And then the third property, which faces Hastings Street, which is the subject of this item, was not developed, and the stipulation of the PD was that it comes back with a development plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the uses on that property have already been approved through the PD. So now the Planning and Zoning Commission is reviewing the development plan, or reviewed the development plan, and that is what is before council, is the development of that particular site. The P&Z did recommend approval 5-1. There are several conditions that are stipulated in the development plan that P&Z approved as well. Item 5B is an abandonment of a portion of Tower Crest Drive. This abuts the property which is at the corner of Camp Wisdom and Cedar Ridge Drive. This particular property, as far as for development, the potential developer has requested that the city consider abandoning the right-of-way for Tower Crest Drive to allow for more developable area on that property. It has been appraised. We did talk with the Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, which owns the property directly to the south of it. As we noted in the memo, we were waiting on a letter from them because currently the way it's platted, the church property has 3 residential lots on the north side of its property, and And so if they ever had plans to develop those as residential, then we could not abandon that right-of-way adjacent to those properties. They have provided a letter. You have a copy of that in front of you from them, acknowledging that they have no plans to develop that as residential, and that they support Palio Partners' abandonment request. If the right-of-way is abandoned, then the developer will replat that property. And at that time, too, we would be able to achieve the right-of-way dedication for the cul-de-sac, which is shown on the concept plan. And then item 5C is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances regarding administration and records management. And this just adds a new section in our records management that allows us to maintain records electronically for record retention purposes under the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. Those are all the items.
Excuse me, on 5B, did you talk about it?
I did. Do you have some questions?
I don't have any questions. I'm just curious if you got any feedback.
I've gotten several emails and phone calls.
Yeah, from the school board,
No.
superintendent,
I have nothing. Oh, no.
they're not happy. They do everything they can to keep the kids at the school. They don't want them walking across the streets. And the way this was handled, we should have included them when we started talking about this. In fact, we were never given any documentation when we went into executive session to talk about removing the cemetery. We've never seen any documentation on it.
Who from the school board contacted you?
They moved the cemetery. It was
No,
done
no,
a
no,
long,
no,
long
no,
time
no, I
ago.
didn't say we moved the cemetery. Mr. Hugman came in, or Hager came in and told us that the cemetery had been moved and we just didn't, we needed to do some housekeeping, clean it up because it was gone. And my understanding is the Texas Historical Society says they have no documentation on that.
They were part of the suit that was filed by the owner of that property, and it has been all settled through with the Texas Historical Commission, and I'm sure the city attorney maybe can. I mean, I don't know all of the details of it, but all of that went through the process, and I know the Historical Commission weighed in on it, but I believe everything was settled, and it was determined that there's no cemetery there. It was gone.
I don't know. We never saw documentation. We were just told it was gone. And then after that, then it just sort of morphed going forward. And there was a public hearing when it went to the P&Z, and it was overwhelmingly, citizens came out and said they did not want to have that area developed, and on that corner, the neighborhoods. And now the way it's being done is kind of backdoor. So the street, all we're saying is we're going to abandon the street, so there's no public hearing, and those residents weren't notified.
There's not a requirement to do that for an abandonment of right-of-way.
Backdoor.
No, the development will still come before council. As if it's a PD, it will come before council.
We have
But
no,
right now,
no reason to do the street.
The property could be developed right now with it not coming before council at all. If there's a use that can go in under the current zoning category, it's zoned neighborhood retail. So
Right.
a use could go in there right now,
Mhm.
and it might be something you want, something you don't.
Right.
That can happen.
Right. But we don't have to change things to make it a place that someone would go into. In fact, we can use zoning also. The schools don't want it. They don't want some place that will entice kids to walk across the school. It's dangerous. That is a very busy intersection. And I know nobody here has had a child in the school, at least recently. The Shell station across the street, they have signs in there that they don't want more than 2 students in there at a time.
Who representing the school district contacted you?
Well,
It's important because if the school district itself has an opinion, the school board and the independent and DISD under superintendent's authority has some issues, then we should be able to hear that from an individual. It doesn't have to, it shouldn't come from a council member. It should come from them.
And I agree with that, but have we asked them their opinion about it? Well, we don't have to.
They're aware of it. I don't know if we have, but if something has come to us at this point.
I will tell you, I did talk to Dr. Smith, and his intent was to come tonight, and I think he's trying to make it back from out of town, so, not sure what he wanted to, where he was gonna stand, but he did, he wanted to make some comments.
And the question I have is, I remember us having the public hearing about it. And at the public hearing, I was under the impression that it was done no-go based on what we decided and what the citizens decided.
That was a different development concept, a different request that was disapproved then.
Okay. And
This is a different request, a different developer.
And it's not going to the P and Z, so they don't have the opportunity to.
It will, no, it will go to
Will.
P and Z through
But
the
we have no
planning.
reason to abandon the street. So you want to pull it to see if they pass it? Because we have no
We
reason
can't-
to abandon
can't
the
go-
street.
We cannot go in with a PD if he doesn't have that property. If it's not abandoned, then he can't show it as developable.
So we're helping.
It's making it more developable for something that would be better suited for that site.
In fact, I was told that they provided that fence along there, trying to keep students, the fence that goes along that piece of property,
Who they?
the school.
The school.
Schools.
Do we know the property, what the planned development want to put there?
The developer is here tonight, so you could ask him those questions. What's shown in this, in the concept plan is proposed retail or proposed restaurant.
well, I mean, and just personally, I have not, none of my kids went to Duncanville ISD. But I have talked on several occasions with the owner of the Shell station on the other side. And a couple things, some things are similar, some things are different. The difference is that Shell station is in Dallas. So he tells me that whenever he has issues, he has to, I guess, he can't call Duncanville PD, it's a Dallas issue. But he will not allow more than 3 kids in that store at a time. And even when those 3 come in, they must leave their backpacks outside. They can't come in with backpacks and stuff like that, because he says that, it's hard for him to watch the register when he's trying to ring somebody up and then keep his eye on the peripheral of what's going on. So it's just a real challenge for him, and he's lost product, that's how you put it, because of the volume of students that's coming in there. And in the morning, I don't know, I go out that way when I'm going to work, stop there, that's where I get my gas. And the traffic between the kids being dropped off and those walking back and forth, it is dangerous. It is very dangerous. And although the school zone is on, parents are driving up in the turning lane, and so the kid will jump out the car to try to get across to get in. So if there is concern, I haven't heard it from the school board, but I've heard it from a lot of parents. That's going to be something for those kids to be crossing that street. And in the evening time, I don't know who comes home that way, but if you come home, because of how the turnaround is in front of the school, they block off the right lane and the middle lane, and there's only, once you cross Camp Wisdom, you have only 1 lane of traffic. There's 1 lane of traffic until school dismissed, so I guess that's what
Crossing Camp Wisdom which way?
if you're going south, you're going south on Cedar Ridge.
South on Cedar Ridge.
South on Cedar Ridge, and if you go into the school campus,
Oh, I
that exit out,
Gotcha.
that
So 2 lanes on the west side of Cedar Ridge are blocked off. is what you're saying.
yes, they block those 2 lanes off to allow, I guess, people picking up or just traffic to exit the school property onto Cedar Ridge. And they've even blocked off, I can't think of the street that's right there by the church, so that people can't dart across in front of that church. there's a street that runs parallel to that church.
That's the one we just renamed.
Middle.
Yeah, no, not, yeah, Middale.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, before you get there.
It's the Pat Zion Church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's the street in front of that
Rolling
church.
Ridge.
Yeah, and they put cones there so people can't dart across again, but you know, you have kids crossing that. There's a security guard there, but I think he's there more to make sure, to direct the people out of the traffic. But in any event, it's gonna be, I just have some safety concerns.
Well, what can we do with that property? I mean, to let it
Well-
languish is not in our best interest either.
Well, I mean, I agree with that, but I mean,
I think that we should talk with the school board and talk to them, because I never noticed the fence around it. And they said they paid for that. And so I went and looked, that's a wrought iron fence around there.
On
Keep
their
it-
property.
No. I guess it's the Oak Cliff Bible, because it's the lot behind this piece of property. And, I think this is something we should talk to them about, talk with them.
You said the developer's here tonight.
Yes.
When is it appropriate for us to hear from the developer? Out there, or do we open a discussion in here?
You can talk to them if they're in here, but.
You can talk to them in here if you have any questions, but I would also urge you to let them speak on the record at the meeting as well.
Yeah, it's not a public hearing, but
No, I know it's not a public hearing.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can still ask them questions for consideration.
Okay. So whoever that developer is, I don't know who that
He is
is.
here.
It's me, yep.
You, sir.
Yes.
Okay. You've heard what's going on. So be prepared to have some questions from council after, when we get into this. I have some questions. I'm going to withhold those questions until we get out for public record.
Sure.
And it's based on what Councilmember LeBlanc has mentioned. Stirring some things in my mind that I had not been aware of.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Be happy to address that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, understanding that, we need to stay on point with this particular item, because what it is the abandonment of that right of way.
Correct.
And that's what's on the agenda. It's not the development, it's not the concept of what's gonna be put there, it's strictly what's gonna be happening to that particular portion of land.
but we need
So-
to know
Yes.
that the abandonment will allow for,
Development.
okay.
But we don't know what that development
Right.
is. It's-
Well, it pretty well
what we
said
have
it in
is-
our
well,
material.
Right, but it's concept only. That's what I'm given to understand, is it's conceptual only, which doesn't mean that that's gonna be what's actually there. They're thinking of some things. Now, we can ask when we get out there. And I think it
It
behooves
was-
us to do that then.
Yeah, pretty clear. It's a 2,000 square foot restaurant and 2,300 square foot retail and 25 parking places. It was pretty clear.
Well, we can take that into detail and have some discussion and interaction with the developer themselves when we get out in council. I think that would be the best course of action for us in terms of getting it on public record. And I know that we're gonna have a lot of people here tonight probably, based on the inputs I've received, phone calls and emails, so. It's a serious question, no doubt.
And I think, as you know, from my district, there were people that come out Cheryl and wanted the ability to go east on Camp Wisdom. And we've told them no for years because of the traffic concerns. In the morning, the sun's in your eyes, you come out of there, you've got traffic coming this way, and then you've got traffic going this way. And we've told them, no, we've had every engineer out there. And now we're adding to that intersection right there, exactly doing what we said we wouldn't do. Because there's a tremendous amount of traffic.
Another question for our attorney then. Based on what I just said, knowing that we're on point for one particular item here,
Right.
the questions, you can hear the conversation that we're having is not about what to do with it.
Correct. You have to focus on the actual abandonment of the right-of-way. As far as any planned project, that would be for a later discussion when and if that project actually comes before the council. But tonight is just the abandonment of the right-of-way.
We have no reason to abandon the right-of-way if we
So
don't.
we cannot ask the developer questions about intentions for the property.
You can, but not any specific about his plan. So what he's got proposed here, it's not whether or not you are approving his restaurant with the parking
Right.
spots. That's not what's
Right.
at issue.
Right.
If you want to ask him, what do you intend to do with it, that would go to why you would be abandoning the right-of-way, and that you can't ask.
Okay,
But no specifics about the project.
okay. I
And
would
we could
ask.
table it too.
Pardon me?
We could table it.
Yes, I understand that. I would ask then for your assistance, when we start asking questions, if we get to, if a particular question is being asked that is not appropriate, speak up.
Yes, I can do that.
Yeah.
I can help keep you on point.
And I'll remind the council, you do have the ability to go into executive session to consult with the attorney on any item on the
Right.
agenda, this being one. So if you can think that there's some legal questions you wish to ask her, you can convene into executive session.
Right,
Yes.
right, okay, okay. All right, well, there's going to be discussion for sure on this. Okay. Okay. All right, I believe then we can go to item 2A, discuss the city sponsorship and support of the Family Bicycle Rally Plan for May 18, 2019. And Mr. Cook, that's your item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So to council, as you know, I've talked about this a few times about a family bicycle rally for our whole entire city. And I've met with, in meetings with a couple of people, one being Beth Farrell, thank you, with B&B Bike. She's on our Parks Board. An assistant principal at Brandenburg, who's with fathers, with dads and fathers of Duncanville, myself, and then we have asked Bart to kind of join us as a little group to consider about the bike family, a friendly bike ride for families. The reasons we wanted to do that is, from the assistant principal standpoint, it was, I think it's called Pro Dads. He was trying to encourage dads to go out and ride bikes with their children, and then students to ride bikes throughout the district. And so his role was going to be contacting different schools, promoting them to come in and to ride bikes, and having a participation trophy for whoever brings most students out to encourage them to ride bikes. We had it set for May 18th. We've since found out that that's also the Olympic fire truck, Special Olympics fire truck. So we're in consideration of moving that date because of that issue. But we do see a lot of energy that could be put around this family bike ride. And so, as requested before we move forward, we wanted to see if the council would consider this being something that you wanted us to move forward as a whole city, and with the city being a sponsor of it as well. And also that same request will be going to the school board as well, to have a joint bike ride for the families of Duncanville. We'll have things for, when we wrap it up, there'll be something at the park for hot dogs and just a good family time period. We're going to invite seniors such as 55 and older to ride as well, and whether it's in the parking lot or whether it's going alone. There are 2 routes. One route is a 6-mile route, which the children and students can ride along. Another route is a 12-mile route that more of the senior riders would ride as well. And so we just hope it to be a good, fun time for our city to engage family into doing something together, and it fits back into our bike lanes and bike trails eventually, but to encourage others to come out to be healthy and to ride bikes as well, and to ride in their neighborhoods. We've asked the city to look at, staff to look at what it would cost to have public safety and public works there. As you can tell, that proposal estimated that city manager provided for us. We know we need to go back and relook at this, especially, it's really a 2-hour ride and not a 4-hour ride. We estimated that about 2 hours will be completed in 2 hours with having the 6 miles and the 12-mile ride. It is not, it's not a fundraising event, it's just a fun event for people to come out and enjoy themselves. So you'll see there's the 6 miles and the 12 miles there as well. We want to kind of block off a couple of streets where the students and the families are safe as they're riding, and then encourage this on an annual basis to kind of keep it going. We would ask the council and school board members perhaps to come and cut a ribbon and get the bike rally started, and just come out and have a good time. So
Is the ISD going to contribute any money to this?
that's what we're doing to vote for. The school board member who's on, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. Cassandra Phillips is also on the committee, and she's going to ask the school board as well to commit to something as well. So trying to make it a joint event. So we will share that, though we want both entities to kind of work together with it, our intentions are to still have some type of bike ride if we don't get the sponsorships. But it would really look great for our entire city to be a sponsored city from school and school board.
Who's paying for those refreshments you talked about?
The refreshments itself will be from small business owners. And we'll just go out and ask them to have water and refreshments to go along the way. We have expertise on the board, and that is, as we mentioned, Beth of B&B Bikes, who have hosted bikes ride throughout Cedar Hill, Lancaster, and all the way around. We'll tell you that a couple of those have not, they've had more of a competitive type bike rides, so not a family bike ride. So Beth is very familiar with everything that goes along with bike rides. So that's my information for now. So I guess what I was looking for now, it's not an approval, but to ask if that's something that, as we consider our planning, that you want us to bring back to you to see if that's something that you want to consider sponsoring as a city as well.
Let me go back in history when I recall that you organized one of these when you and I were both on the EDC together.
Yeah, you wrote, I think you wrote one street. You got pretty close to riding the full street.
I walked with you.
I stood on a corner and waved.
I have a picture of it. I have a picture of it.
What kind of participation did you get for that?
At that time, I think it was about 25 to 30 riders. And I personally on that one made sure that we had 2 police officers making sure everybody was safe. So I paid out of pocket, which was because I wanted to see it happen. Officers trailing us along the way, and it worked out really well. Actually, we had talk about seniors riding. We have a senior in the corner there that had his bike, and he was out riding. We had a poop out truck, and he got a chance to experience the poop out truck.
It's called a sagway.
Segway, okay, all right. But we were just so impressed. We were so impressed he had his bike and got to riding. So.
I kind of
So that's why Beth, I tried to get Beth was tied up today, so she couldn't come. So that's why I'm getting this report. But Sagwagon, he got to experience the confidence of the ride going back.
If I could vote, I'd vote yes.
well, okay. A couple of questions. The 12-mile route. Why does Beth or you feel that we need a 12-mile route for a family outing? Because what in a 12-mile route then incurs greater costs. If we were just doing one 6-mile route, why do we need 2 different routes? Does the 6-mile and 12-mile route, do they intersect? I mean, it's like a marathon. You got a 5K and you got a 10K, but they kind of follow the same path. What's going on with this?
Yeah, we knew that the 6 mile was more so for the children, especially for the ones who was bringing on the ride along with their students and their kids. And the 6 mile was just enough to kind of have fun and get that done. The 12 mile encouraged other bike riders such as people who ride on a regular basis to
The
ride. on-
enthusiasts.
Yes. And then and plus going up Wheatland Road is not an easy deal to do anyway, but, no, Daniel, I'm sorry. Going up Daniel is not an easy hill to go up anyway. But the 6 and the 12 we particularly divided that up. Now, since then, in looking at the cost of it, Beth has agreed to kind of go back and look at the route to see about reducing some portions of the route where it would not require so much of the officer's involvement. So even if the city allocated and say, yeah, you know what, this is something we'd like to do as a city, but here's an investment, here's the only investment we can put into it, we're willing to work around that budget as well.
I'd really like to know how much the DISD is going to contribute toward this, to offset some of these costs, and to see the revised one, if Beth is going to rework it so that the cost can be reduced. I think it's going to be best for the council to understand that, rather than looking at this. I mean, this $7,700 is a big ticket.
It is. What will happen is, you know, if we need commitments to move forward, to say there's an interest. What happens, then we'll have waiting on this board meeting, and by that time, we're in the summer, or we're
already there. I mean,
yeah, we're more so past, pushed off as we go along the way. So if one person needs to step up and say, I have an interest, and if you bring me back more information, there's an interest. It's kind of what we want to do. That's the same thing Cassandra would do with the school board. Just so there's an interest.
They only meet once a month, don't they?
I don't know how. Is it once a
Yeah,
month?
I think they only meet once a month. So basically then, we're gonna have to suspend any decision until we find out what they're gonna do. And I think their meetings are always toward the end of the month, because that's when we end up going over there for the football team and other things. So they're probably not gonna have another meeting until the end of April. So putting that into perspective, then they can't come back to you or us with a contribution toward the cost until early May anyway.
So then what will happen, again, it goes back to, let me use this word tit for tat, because when I go to the school board, they're gonna say, what is the city gonna do? And so we just need someone, since we have an opportunity to have this meeting first, it'd be great
Well,
for us to say.
the answer to that question is the city is sitting here looking at this big ticket, and I personally am having some issues.
Well, that's what I'm saying, to tell you, you would say what,
My poop out wagon says I got pushback.
go ahead.
Well, when Councilmember Cooks and I talked about this earlier today, and as he mentioned, he was estimating 2 hours. We went by the information that we knew, which we didn't have a whole lot of information other than the map and the date. And what I talked with him about as well was, based on the map and being on a lot of the major roads, I could see where PD felt the need to have enough officers out there. I also think part of it, as I found out later today too, they were assuming a lot of officers because they didn't have cost volunteers, because it's the same day as the Special Olympics. So changing the date can offset some of these costs if they can use some volunteers. Changing the route to maybe more neighborhood type streets versus the main streets like Daniel, Wheatland, where possible, can also help reduce. I think we can reduce these by working together with the route and with Beth on something that would work better. The PD can work with them on.
so with that, Mark, I'm saying I'm supportive of the idea, because I think it's a great idea to involve the community and have something along that line. But, yeah, when I first looked at the date, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I knew what was happening that day too, and same thing going back. It's like, hey, let's just revamp it. But I think it could be a wonderful activity.
So would it be possible for staff to, based on what you just said, and if Beth can get together with you and the staff, and we come up with a new route, or some adjusted routes, and we come up with some new costs, that we can discuss this at the 16 April meeting, and have a little better definitive understanding of what the cost would be.
We can do that.
Yeah, I think so.
And
The
if you
date
could-
is probably the bigger.
Yeah, it is,
question, too,
yes,
and
yeah,
now
because they have
it's- yeah.
testing going on,
Yeah.
so they want to interrupt that
That's
testing
true.
period with the student.
Because yeah, but that's with that date there, I'm sitting going, if you're moving it, it's like,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's
too much
gonna happen
wiggle
this
room.
year. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, another thing with Citizens on Patrol being available too, that could reduce reduce the cost as well.
Right.
And if we're gonna do this annually, we could look at putting it in the park budget so that money's available
Yeah,
each
True,
year.
Yeah.
true.
We come up with an amount, that way it can continue each spring.
That's right, we have to get started somewhere, so this is kind of the
Well,
start.
we can have you come back from Oklahoma and host it.
Ride your bike.
Let's
Yeah,
do it.
right.
We could also.
It's downhill from
private
Oklahoma.
sponsor like Wells Fargo or
Yeah,
somebody.
you can find a sponsor somewhere there, that's right. And that, actually, that is my part of the committee, is to go out and find other sponsors, small business sponsors as well.
Well,
You can get those big business sponsors too.
Yeah. We'll get it started, we'll get some history behind us first.
we need some consensus from the council that we're at least in favor of the concept.
Yes.
Sounds like a good idea for a family event. But it comes down to a business decision.
Right.
So is it possible then for staff, and you get with Cassandra and come back with some more information, giving us a new date, giving us some new routes, some new numbers, and we talk about this?
And that is fine, I'll probably share with you then, and on the Cassandra end, is once we come up with the total amount, what we'd like to come back with you and say, here's the investment we'd like the city to do, and so have the city amount versus waiting for an approval of what the school board says as well. Because that's just two entities trying to be on the same page.
Oh, no,
So
fine,
if we
whatever
say-
number comes up is 50/50.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
Is that fair?
School district's a lot bigger than we are.
Well, they only get 52% of our budget.
You know, based on the tax ratio, is that what you're saying?
Then you go for it. You can negotiate it for us.
Yeah, I'll come back as a consultant.
So- All right, so if Kevin have added back, we'll add it back to the agenda, we'll give you some more
Okay.
information later. Thanks for considering.
Okay. All right. That concludes our briefing session. So we are concluding the briefing session officially at 6:37, and we will convene the regular council at 7 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 7 o'clock, and we are convening the city council session for the Duncanville City Council, April 2nd, 2019. And the first thing on our item, or our agenda tonight, is an invocation, and that will be done by Pastor Chris Gutierrez. Pastor Chris, please stand.
Thank you, Mayor Gordon, leadership team, for your invitation. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for life today. Thank you for your grace, your mercy in our lives. You're so good and so faithful to us, God. Father, we thank you for the wonderful privilege that we get to live in this Duncanville community, God. Lord, I pray for your protection, your covering over those that serve in our law enforcement and our fire departments, God. We pray for our mayor. We pray for our city officials here today, Father God, as they step into this meeting today, Lord. I pray that you would give them the wisdom, Lord, to govern well. I pray for unity. I pray, Father God, that you would just personally cover, protect each and every one of them and their families, God. Lord, we pray for the agenda that is set before them today, that your spirit would guide and lead them as they make decisions that affect our wonderful city. Father, we thank you again for bringing us here in this place today. We glorify, we honor you, we praise you. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledges to our flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Please be seated. Report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There are a couple of things I would like to note. We have recently revamped our city newsletter. So previously you were getting the spotlight quarterly in your mailboxes. And so we have changed that, and we are no longer doing the quarterly newsletter. Now what we are doing is a monthly newsletter. We've changed the format of it, changed the information in there, or made it more brief and more colorful. and it's going to be in the utility bills every month, so you will, please look for that insert in your bill. Don't just throw away the insert and look at the bill, but the weekly or the monthly Champion newsletter will be in there. For those that get your bills electronically, you will be able to click on the site. There is a link on the site to view the inserts, and so you will be able to see the monthly Champion that way as well. So please look for that and let us know what you think about that. Secondly, this week, Saturday, April 6th, from 8 to 1 o'clock is Operation Clean Duncanville and the Community Litter Cleanup. You can bring items to James Collins Boulevard and Armstrong Park. You can bring gently used items for Goodwill. You can bring documents for shredding, electronics recycling. There will be dumpsters for bulk items as well as a brush truck for brush disposal. If you would like to volunteer to clean up litter in the city, meet at Armstrong Park at 8 o'clock, and you will be divided into groups and then sent to a location to pick up litter, and then there is a free lunch afterwards at Armstrong Park. And then finally, you probably have seen the tulips have been blooming. We planted them a month later, hoping to get more of a bloom closer to Easter, but nature overrules, of course. So as the bulbs, as the tulips bloom out, we will have the tulip bulbs available for the public. They're free starting next Monday, April 8th at the Rec Center. And it is only while supplies last, but if you'd like to get some bulbs, please come by and pick them up. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a proclamation in recognition of the National Library Week, April 7th through 13th, 2019. I will do that, and our library director, Julio Velasquez, come up, please. Okay. Whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions fueling efforts to better their communities, campuses, and schools, and whereas librarians are organizers and information experts. You're an information expert? Yeah, thank you. Just want to make sure I'm reading the truth here. Okay. Who guide people to the best information resources, providing not only the facts, but also the expertise and services that add meaning to those facts. And whereas librarians continue to fulfill their role in leveling the playing field for all who seek information and access to technologies, especially as our society is at a critical juncture regarding the changing information landscape and the skills needed to thrive in our digital world. And whereas libraries support democracy and affect social change through their commitment to providing equitable access to information for all. And libraries work to serve all community members, offering services and educational resources that transform communities, open minds, and promote inclusion and diversity. And whereas libraries provide forums for diverse ideas and points of view that help us better understand each other and ourselves. And whereas libraries are looking beyond their traditional roles, providing more opportunities for community engagement and delivering new and innovative services that connect closely with the needs of those they serve. And whereas the Duncanville Public Library and its personnel have supported the educational, economic, and cultural interests of our community in these ways and more since 1955. And whereas libraries, library workers, library supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, I, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, do hereby proclaim National Library Week, April 7th through 13th, 2019, and urge all citizens to visit their public library this week, engage with their librarians, and explore the world of possibilities that awaits them there. Julio, as a consumer, client, whatever you want to call it, there you go, there's the word, of our library, I want to thank you for what you do. It truly is transformation of what we used to think of as a library. With the digital information age, you know, I don't know how many in the audience know it, but you can rent a hotspot. If you know, for a lot of people that don't have internet at their homes, you can rent a hotspot. It doesn't cost anything, does it? So what did I say? Borrow. You can borrow a hotspot, take it home and work on the internet, and then bring it back. So we have gone into truly understanding the digital age in terms of how information is processed in our communities and in society ourselves. So thank you very much, Julio, for all that you do and all of your staff. I know they work very, very hard, and you have a lot of volunteers there as well. So on behalf of the entire city, thank you very much for all that you do. The next item on our agenda, item 2B, receive a presentation from Patello, Brown and Hill LLP on the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2018, including the independent auditor's report. Mr. Summerlin.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Richard Summerlin, Finance Director. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that this process of putting a CAFR together is a very long and arduous process, and I have great thanks for my entire staff, and especially for Assistant Finance Director Tia Pettis, who's here with us tonight. A lot of long hours and hard work, as well as the Audit Committee. We met on March 25th. We have Dennis Schwartz as the chairman, Leslie Thomas, Don McBurdett, are also members that serve on the council. And then we have outside citizens, James Talley and Patrick Harvey, that serve on that committee as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Todd Pruitt, audit partner with Patillo Brown.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the city for giving us the opportunity to perform the audit this year. And I'd like to give special thanks to Richard and Tia and all of the city finance staff and other staff that we work with during the course of the audit. As Richard mentioned, the city's comprehensive annual financial report, it has over 100 pages of financial information in it. It's a lot of time and effort that goes into the preparation of this report. And doing that, and at the same time undergoing the financial audit process and also dealing with the software implementation is not as much fun as it sounds like it might be, but they really did a fantastic job of giving us the information that we needed to do our jobs. I'd also like to thank the city's audit committee. I met with the audit committee last week, and we discussed the results of the audit in detail. What I'd like to do tonight is to just briefly go over the results of the audit, and then if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to address those. If you're looking at the city's comprehensive annual financial report, the first section of the report is called the introductory section. You'll know you're in that section if you have Roman numerals at the bottom of your page. The second section of the report is called the financial section, and that's the section that contains the financial statements that we have audited. It's kind of the meat and potatoes of your CAFR. And the first page of the financial section, you'll find our independent auditor's report on the financial statement audit. And what this report basically means is that the preparation of these financial statements is the responsibility of the city. It's our responsibility as your auditors to express an opinion on the financial statements. Our opinion you'll find on page 2. I'm happy to report we've issued what's called an unmodified opinion. It's sometimes referred to as a clean opinion, and it's the highest form of opinion that we can issue. And what it really means to you as a user of the report is that the financial statements that you have in this financial section have been audited by our firm, and in our opinion, they're free of any material misstatements, and they're presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. On page 3, the last paragraph of that report, you'll note that our audit was performed in accordance with government auditing standards. Those standards require your auditors to do a number of things that go beyond just generally accepted auditing standards. one of which is to report on the city's internal controls over the financial reporting process and compliance with laws and regulations and contracts and grants. That report is not included in the CAFR. It's issued separately, but I can give you a brief summary of what that report says. In order to plan and perform our audit, we have to first gain an understanding over the internal controls over the financial reporting process. And what that really means is we have to understand the policies and procedures that you have in place in order to prepare your financial statements. If during that process we identify any deficiencies in your controls that we think are significant, we're required to report them in that report, and I'm happy to report there were no significant deficiencies that were identified during the course of the audit. The second part of that report deals with compliance with laws and regulations and contracts and grants. As part of our audit, we're required to perform certain tests of noncompliance, and what we're looking for are things that, if we find noncompliance, we think they would have a material impact on your financial statements. Had there been any instances of noncompliance that were required to be reported, they would be included in that report, and I'm happy to report there were no instances of noncompliance. So as far as the results of the audit standpoint, you're batting 1,000. You've got a clean opinion on your financial statements. You've got no significant deficiencies that were identified over the financial reporting process, and you've got no instances of noncompliance that were identified. So I congratulate the city on the very clean results of the audit. If anyone has any questions about the audit or the financial statements, I'd be happy to answer those.
I have a comment. I want to thank your firm for doing an exceptional job during a difficult time for us in terms of bringing in the ERP and having to do the audit at the same time. I don't know how many times you've encountered that particular environment, but I know it was probably a little more difficult than anticipated.
It does make it a lot more work than usual. But they really did a good job, though, of getting us what we needed in order to do ours, considering everything they had going on.
Well, I want to, I'm sure I speak for the entire council, that we want to commend our financial staff, Mr. Summerlin and Ms. Pettis, for producing financial statements and an audit and an internal control report with no significant or material findings. My background in business, knowing that the first thing I ever looked for in an audit report was to go to the back page and look for those, you know, where are those materials and significant findings identified. And that's when we took a big, deep breath in terms of what was seen on that back page. So Richard and Tia, thank you so much for keeping our financial statements in perfect alignment with GASB and all particulars that have to be done in order to make this a transparent and truly communicative financial statement. Thank you very much. Another comment?
I do also
Mr.
want to
Cooks.
echo the mayor's comments to our financial group and say thank you very much for your hard work and all the time spent as well. Would you remind me your length of time that you've been conducting audits for us for the city of Duncanville?
For the city, I
Yes.
believe this was the 5th year.
This is the 5th year. All right, thank you.
Okay, seeing there's no other comments, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 4 on our agenda, it's the consent agenda. And City Secretary, read those into the minutes, please.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the March 19, 2019 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B, consider a resolution authorizing the award of a term bid for IFB number 19-019 erosion control services for the unit price bid to Night Erosion Control, Inc. of Arlington, Texas, and the unit amount bid for an estimated 2-year expenditure amount of $120,000.
Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. Please vote. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5A, items for individual consideration. conduct a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending the existing PD, Plan Development District, ordinance number 2259, and approval of a development plan and regulations for residential and/or commercial mixed use with loft apartment on Lot 14R, Block 2, original town of Duncanville edition, Duncanville, Dallas County, Texas, more commonly known as 212 North Hastings Street, Duncanville.
Mr. Mayor and Council, good evening. I do want to take this opportunity to introduce Ms. Sherry Sefco. As you know from the last City Council, Chastity, our city planner, is on maternity leave, and so we've engaged the services of Ms. Sefco for her technical experience in planning while Chastity is on maternity leave. She was at the Planning and Zoning meeting previously, so she's familiar with this project, and so I'll turn it over to her to brief y'all on the particulars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Greetings, Honorable Mayor and Council members, Sherry Sefco, and I'll try to adhere to the 2-minute. Greetings, I'm here to deliver the staff report and presentation for this zoning request. As the caption reads, it's a request to amend the Plan Development Zoning Ordinance for this property to add Lot 3A into kind of the development scenario for the overall property. I'm not going to kind of go through all this word for word. Let's see if I can, this is my first time with your clicker, so let me make sure I've got this right. Okay, applicant is Donnie Payne, representing Cherry Pickens, LLC. In 2015, the council approved this plan development ordinance, which established mostly mixed-use development for this, the property that is at question tonight, and also the property is just due north of this property. The plan development encompassed this property and those two, and it established permitted uses, Lot 1A, which is to the north for neighborhood retail. Lot 2A would be single family, and it's currently, as my understanding, is being used as a bed and breakfast. Lot 3A is permitted to be developed with neighborhood retail, but also with additional uses for potential single-family residential, as well as mixed use with perhaps a loft apartment. And that's the subject of your item tonight. A condition of the plan development states that the future development requires a separate review because it was not included in the development plan for lots 1A and 1A and 2A when the plan development was originally approved in 2015. So what you have before you tonight is adding the development scenario, or the proposed development scenario for Lot 3A, now that a group has come along and they want to make use of that property. This is referenced in the zoning ordinance as a development plan, requires public hearing, and an amendment to the plan development ordinance, which is why we're here tonight. The uses, or the proposed uses for Lot 3A are already established as okay in the existing plan development. So what you're looking at tonight is not the uses, but it's really how the property developer wants to make use of Lot 3A and how they want to build it and what it looks like and feels like. So I just want the council to understand that the uses that they're proposing are already allowed under that plan development. They're planning to construct a 4,200 square foot building, 2,100 on the bottom, 2,100 on the top, more or less. The bottom is to be used for neighborhood retail uses, and the top they want to build a loft apartment. The way they are designing the building, the two levels could be occupied by the same person. If somebody had their business on the bottom and they wanted to live upstairs, they could. But it could also, the way they're designing the building is my understanding that it could also be separate users. The bottom could be used by a neighborhood retail user, and then the top could be used, by a family or someone that wanted to have the apartment upstairs. The apartment upstairs is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. They are providing parking in the rear of the property. We'll get to the site plan here in just a moment, and I've got a laser pointer. I'm kind of deadly with these things. I'll try not to poke anyone's eye out, but we'll get to the site plan here in a moment. I'll kind of show the council and the audience just a little bit of a kind of a briefing on how they want to lay it out. Okay, here's the site plan, and it's a little faint on screen. And again, I'm going to try real hard not to hurt anybody with this. But the bottom user, this is the street side. On this side, this is Hastings. And the entrance to the retail would have like a covered, like walkway to lead you into the retail space or spaces. There's two different spaces shown on the site plan. It could be occupied by one tenant, or it could be occupied by two separate tenants. And the parking for these, and we'll get to the parking plan here in a little bit, is out front on Hastings. On the upstairs level, the apartment is laid out with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. The access into the apartment would be from the rear, where there is a covered carport, I guess you could call it, or a covered parking area that will accommodate 2 off-street parking spaces for the apartment. And it would be accessible through the rear from where those parking spaces are. Okay, the site plan, taking a look at the setbacks, 20 feet from neighboring property to the south, and that's where the driveway will go. And part of that, I would imagine, is out of consideration of the residential property to the south, just to kind of separate the building a bit from the users that are on the south side. 14 feet from the property on the east, and again, pulling the building as far as it possibly can from the, I believe it's residential properties on the east, and then 36 feet from the front property line, and that accommodates the front end or front load parking there off Hastings Street for the retail uses. The applicant, like I said a minute ago, is providing 4 additional parking spaces on site for the retail and 2 covered spaces for the apartment. We have a graphic here coming up, and I'll kind of give you a little bit better picture of that here in a moment. And given proximity to the downtown district, the public parking provided on West Jesperson and Main Street could also be used, because it's my understanding that those are kind of used by a lot of the area businesses. But this particular property will accommodate 4 spaces for retail and an additional 2 spaces at least for the upstairs apartment. The planned development district allowed for construction of decomposed granite parking. I know that's something that has been talked about a lot. It was talked about and discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission level. Lots 1A and 2A, my understanding, they've been out there a long time, and they have kind of their parking that's using the like gravel and decomposed granite. The developer of Lot 3A wishes and is asking for that same consideration for that parking material, for their additional 4 spaces for the retail, and I believe as well as the little driveway that leads back to the residential units parking. The Planning and Zoning Commission will get to their recommendation in a minute, but of course certified and reviewed by ADA accessibility specialist is provided for in the PD, and of course the city would require that anyway during a plan review and during planning and development plans for the property. Okay, the site plan, it's a little faint for my eyes, but I'll again try not to poke any eyes out here. The 4 spaces that are being provided for the retail space, again, this is the retail space. This is looking at the ground level. There's like a covered kind of walkway into the main entrances for the retail space, either 1 entrance or 2. It can be 2 different tenants. And the spaces that are being provided are head-in directly off Hastings Street. The residential unit, their parking would be accessed via a driveway back to the back of the unit into this area, which is a covered carport. And of course, access into the residential unit would be separated from the traffic, and not traffic, but the visitors for the retail businesses. It'd be accessed separately and independently and privately from the back end of the building here. And of course, they've provided like a little backup area so cars, backing out of the carport can come out and head out properly onto Hastings Drive instead of having to back the whole distance on back to Hastings. There were no specific conditions for building design included in the plan development ordinance. And what the applicant is proposing is a 2-story building of cementitious fiberboard siding, which is a cementitious material. It's very durable and everything, but rather than using other kinds of wood or vinyl or other kinds of siding. So the applicant is proposing the cementitious fiberboard. And the idea behind using that with the roof lines and the design of the building, which we'll have a graphic here in a moment, is to make the building look and feel a little more residential-like rather than like just retail. So they're trying to design the building to make it kind of fit in a little bit more with the residential look and feel of this particular area, which is just outside the downtown area. The building is approximately 28 feet in height to the tallest peak of the roof. And here's the elevations that have been proposed. Kind of looking at this is the south elevation. Here's the little covered area as you go into the retail spaces to shop or coffee shop or whatever goes in down there. And the carport, the entrance to the carport, which we saw on the site plan, which is accessed by a driveway here, is in this area. The front of the building would have this, and this is the overhang going into the retail. There's some like storefront windows, you know, for what retail looks like. And then upstairs is the loft apartment, which has a little balcony out there for outside enjoyment for whoever lives in that space. And this is just kind of an idea of the proposed elevations. As you can see, it's cementitious fiberboard siding. I don't know yet, and this might be a question for the applicant, I don't know if colors are locked in, but it could be other colors. But as far as we can tell, it has more of a residential look and feel as opposed to a stark flat roof retail look and feel. This is the parking spaces into the, whoops, okay. I'm still new with your devices here. Here's the parking spaces into the retail space, and you walk under the little overhang to the sheltered entrances there. The parking, the driveway that leads to the parking area to the residential unit are back here. The applicant is also proposing a new 6-foot wood fence along the southern property line, and again, that's in consideration for the neighbors that are on the south side, as well as adding some shrubbery and landscaping amenities inside that fence to kind of soften the appearance, and also some trees. I don't think they're all shown here because they really wanted to show the building here, but there's like three trees there along the front, and we'll look at the landscape plan here in a moment. And this is just a little bit of a kind of showing a little bit through the fence there, you know, kind of shading it out so you can see that side of the building and the retail. Landscaping and screening. The Plan Development District did not specify any particulars as far as landscaping and screening. The landscape plan is showing the trees along the front, and I'll flip to a landscape plan here in a moment. And then some flower beds or landscape beds along the north and the west sides. The remainder of the lot will be planted in turf grass. The applicant's proposing to plant shrubs, as I mentioned a minute ago, behind that fence on the southern property line, again, to try to soften the view of that fence. Condition of the Plan Development District states that alternative designs for fencing materials. It's our understanding that the applicant is wanting to do a wood fence along with the landscaping amenities on the inside there. Okay, here's the little landscape plan. And they're showing 3 new trees here, some shrubbery along the new fence here on the southern, and then most of the rest of the site would probably be turf grass, is my understanding. Given the proximity to the downtown district, it's appropriate to recommend a freestanding sign. We're going to start talking signs here. The Plan Development District is not terribly specific on that. The applicant is not proposing any wall signage plastered to the buildings. They're trying to go for a little bit more of a residential look and feel, but a monument sign is being proposed. They're kind of in the frontage, and I think you saw that on the architect's rendering of the appearance of the building. And so the condition about the signage and what it is supposed to be is one of the recommendations for the PD amendment. The applicant does not file, okay, I'm not going to go through all that, that's in the ordinance, but what happened was Lot 3A was not included in the development plan. That's why we're here tonight. I think I said that up front. And that's why we're here, is now they're wanting to paint the new picture, for this, their development of this third lot in this Plan Development District. And, yep, a conceptual plan was not approved, or it was not approved along with that, so that's why we're here this evening. And we've already established that the uses are allowed. Land use and development plan approval. The applicant has supplied a site plan showing the parking. They've supplied the landscaping and the necessary elevations for your consideration this evening with this plan development amendment. And surrounding land uses, kind of backing up here a little bit to the north, we've already talked about that a little bit. Lots 1A and 2A are already being used with non-residential uses. One's a print shop, and the other is a residential type structure being used as a bed and breakfast. To the east, single-family residential district, single-family homes. to the west across Hastings Street, and that's in the downtown zoning district, and they are developed with non-residential mixed use already. So directly across the street, there's already mixed use properties over there. And there are 2 apartment units in a mixed use building directly across from the subject property. And then to the south, including immediately adjacent to this property, is zoned neighborhood retail, but they're developed with single-family homes, which would be considered non-conforming with the current zoning, which is neighborhood retail. The subject property falls within the downtown district opportunity area, and that kind of starts to stretch the thinking a little bit outside the downtown zoning district. The opportunity area on the comprehensive plan is starting to imagine that buffering area, the areas, immediately surrounding your busyness, business, heartbeat of the community there in the downtown area. The downtown district, it's envisioned as a regional destination and a hub of activity. And I know there have been past discussions about whether or not to go across Hastings and include more area in that downtown district. But this particular plan development back in 2015 might have been pre-imagining that might be an appropriate thing to take a look at, since it is on the other side of Hastings. This the downtown district vertical mixed use boutique retail, that seems to be what is being proposed here, and also pedestrian order, trying to get people out of their cars and walking through the downtown area. The area east of the downtown district, that's the zoning district, not the opportunity area, was discussed during the development process of the comprehensive plan. It was contemplated that future assessment may warrant extending the downtown zoning district boundary to formally incorporate these properties. This is not new news. It's been discussed here before. The proposed development plan seems to be consistent with the future vision established in your comprehensive plan for this general area in the opportunity area. 17 notices were sent out in accordance with state law. It's my understanding the staff report said 5 responses to opposition were received. It appeared to me, and again, I'm kind of a newbie, but 2 of them seemed to be sent from the same person and the same address. So 5 or 4, and all the ones that I have seen, and Athena, I think all the ones that I have seen have been in opposition, is my understanding. And this is just kind of a little bit of a map walkabout, if you will. The property is just to the north, that's 1A and 2A are being used for those uses. The property just to the west across Hastings has the apartment units and mixed use. And, whoops, plunk. And the property just south of this is a residential property, and just to the east, behind this property, is single-family residential. And this map is basically showing the 200-foot buffer zone, the notification area, where staff dutifully sent out our 200-foot property owner notices to make sure everyone's aware in the area, of the proposed amendment to the plan development. And kind of another aerial view a little bit further out, just to see the context of the development of properties along Main Street, as well as in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. And this is the city zoning map, also showing the zoning pattern, if you will, in the area. And as council can see, the properties along the east side of Hastings are planned development. There's kind of a variety of uses there. And then, of course, the downtown district area is immediately on the other side of Hastings and inclusive of both sides of Main Street in this area. On March 11th, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered this request, and after their public hearing and lots of comment and discussion, they voted 5-1 to recommend approval of the request by the applicants, but with 5 conditions. The first of which is it shall be developed in accordance with the development plan, which you're looking at tonight and is part and parcel of your consideration tonight. And that should be incorporated into the ordinance, the draft of which is included in your packets tonight. The number 2 is the property shall meet obviously city, state, and federal regulations, and it also includes compliance with acceptable drainage. The city will be taking a very, very close look at that during the actual development of this property, whatever it becomes developed as, to make sure that there's no negative impacts on other properties or on the street or or anything in the area as far as additional stormwater drainage. And that occurs within the subdivision plating and development review process. The third one is the ground floor limited to uses permitted in the neighborhood retail. And then the second floor, they're asking, of course, to be used as residential. Again, the use is allowed under the plan development. The fourth was the decomposed granite parking area must be certified by an accessibility specialist to make sure that it's going to handle and comply with ADA requirements as far as the people that are going to be walking on it and accessing the building. And then the fifth is signage limited to a monument sign as opposed to building-mounted signs or other types of signs that are not provided for in the plan development. And I think that is the end of my spiel. I'd be happy to stand by for any questions as they arise.
Please stand by. I think in view of the number of comment cards that I have in terms of this being a public hearing, we'll proceed with having input from our citizens now.
Yes, sir.
So if you stand by, Ms. Sefco, I appreciate it.
I'm sorry? Oh, the applicant is here this evening. I'm
The
sorry.
applicant is here?
They are here this evening,
Okay,
and they
thank
may
you.
wish to address the council with some comments of their own at your leisure.
I'm going to go ahead and take everything from the public hearing from the citizens, and then, because you'll hear their input, and you may have some comments to make about that as well. Okay? Okay, the first card I have, now reminding those individuals this is a public hearing, even though I have a card, you are not limited to 2 minutes. Okay? First individual is Mary Nance Maza. Oh, sorry, protocol. Officially opening public hearing at 7:56.
Yes, my name is Mary Nance Meza, and I live at 206 North Hastings, adjacent to this proposed new building. I'm highly opposed to it. For one thing, it's overbuilding, and there's not enough parking up there for this, and I believe that anything that is built should provide its own parking. And you say 4 parking spaces for 2 retail is not enough. And there's not enough for the shared parking because it's already, the pie is split too many ways, and there's not enough to divide it anymore. And I think, how can you say you got 4 parking spaces when you're using decomposed granite? How do you divide that off? The other parking that they have up there is not divided like the pretty little picture that they make with divided parking spaces. You can't paint decomposed granite. And how are you going to be for sure that 4 cars can get there? Secondly, this is not, Hastings is not a street with a lot of traffic, and it was said that it was a walking area. There are no sidewalks. The only way you can walk back there is you walk on the street. There's no room for sidewalks. Secondly, I'm concerned about the drainage because before this was allowed to be built up, and it's caused water to run down on me and fill up my carport with water. And I want to make sure that there's a drainage issue and that there is screening up against me. And the wood fence was only brought up, and we were also, when it was brought to our attention that it was a garage, I don't know when it changed to a carport. What else is going to change? And the granite is not up to what the city says that the code should be, which is concrete. Concrete is lasting. Granite is not. And I propose that it be denied. And I thank you for your time. And I think it's in the best interest of the city of Duncanville to deny this, because when you overbuild and there's not sufficient parking, you doom a business for failure, and we don't need any more failures. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Cherry? Oh, okay. Danella Payne? Another, okay. Dan Jesperson.
Brings back memories of the good old days. Mayor, city manager, members of the council, thank you very much for allowing us to give input tonight. You know, it's a thankless job you do. I know I've been there. Everybody's always against you, but you know, you persevere. I don't really think this project will work in the scope it is developing now. If you want to build a house there, hey, build the house. It's no problem. Build the house, but it is not a retail area. Okay, 302 North Main, excuse me. I have basically lived that area for 50 plus years. And there's probably been 50 failures of businesses or move-ins or something of the house that Mr. Garrett used to use as his Photoshop. He did really good when he had his Photoshop because he did all the school pictures. And, you know, when that ended and everything's digital, of course, he's deceased now. But that place has been in and out. If anybody stayed there over 6 months, it was probably me because I rented it for storage for a long time. But there is no parking back there. And if you have a retail establishment, you must, two things you really have to have for a customer. You have to have some visibility to let them know you're there. And you need to have some some spots for them to park so they can get your business. When we did the Main Street project back in, city manager, what, 2000, early 2000s, whatever, one of the big concepts, oh, people are going to walk up and down the street. That has been a colossal failure. We couldn't even get the contractor to walk up the street when he had things to do from the 200 block to 300 block. He'd drive his pickup 2 spaces. That's just him. It's never been a walking area. What kind of retail is proposed here? I don't want to create any animosity, but I think we probably have enough beauty shops and nail salons in Duncanville right now. You got to have visibility to be able to survive. You drive up South Main, North Main, East Camp Wisdom, West Camp Wisdom, there's lots of available space for retail with visibility. Parking issues abound even today because people have more cars than they have spots at their house. We have right behind us at the 300 block of Hastings, there's probably 6 to 8 people live in the house and there's 3 parking spots, and so you know where they're parked the rest of the time. And I don't know who owns that park. We used to own it, but then the city cannibalized it when they did the Main Street project, and it's okay, it's beautiful. You do need to restripe it though and get the handicap spots repainted. But earlier this fall, I don't know, November, December, we had a medical emergency behind at 300 Hastings, and you cannot even get the fire trucks and the ambulance in there to help the gentleman who unfortunately died that night. But I don't know if you could get them in there or not, but every afternoon you go down there and people, it's a freeway at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because they're trying to avoid Main Street, which is congested with traffic from Reed, Central, Fair Meadows, everybody coming this way and that way. Your police officers can't even get up and down the street in the afternoon a lot of days. They have to go through the slip lane and hopefully they can get through that way. I don't want whoever is building this thing, I don't want them to be a failure. That's not my intent. I want to help protect them to find a spot where they could really have a good retail spot if that's what they want. And if they want to build a home in there, what value home are they going to have to build? Homes today are, what, $90 to $100 a square foot maybe on new construction? You're talking about building a $200,000 home in that facility. Yeah, that's an awful lot without any frontage to even look out your front door. I don't know how many women would like to go to their front door and look at a 6-foot fence. That's the first thing they're going to see. That would be really appealing to a lot of people. But, you know, how are you going to put it on tax rolls? Is it a single family deal or is it a retail? Do they pay property tax based on single family, or do they where they can get homestead exemptions, or do they pay it on retail, commercial, where we don't get any exemptions? And, you know, I'm not the biggest taxpayer in town, but it was a chunk to write a change check this year for $25,000. It wasn't a whole lot of fun. But anyway, hey, we're blessed to be able to do it, and I'm glad I could do it. But I don't want people to come in Duncanville and be a failure. One of the things that we have in our community today is we don't have a lot of new places we can go build. So you're going to have to figure out, you're going to have to come up with a repurpose plan. What is your vision for 2020? I don't know. I'm sure you have one or you've been working on one. But we don't have a lot of new spots to go, and some of the big major retailers and service places, that ship has sailed. You look at even Cedar Hill in the parking area where Barnes & Noble and that center section of Highlands or whatever it's called now, I don't know. How many of those places have come and gone because they just don't have anybody to even know they're there? And they're going to be the biggest problem. And just believe me from experience, it's not going to work very well because you don't have the frontage down there. There's no way to get it unless you're going to tear down part of the stuff in front of it. I can use that whole parking lot on a daily basis if I really tried hard enough. With a few, 15 or 20 employees, have a sewing class, have 20 ladies come in. That's pretty well shot West Jefferson Way and Main Street parking lot. It's gone. It's used. But, you never know what you're going to get. They may blow me off the water because it's so great that people would come. I doubt it. And as being a public official up there, I see y'all tonight. I know y'all get paid a whole lot because you don't even have to turn in your 1099s. But what really makes a difference, and I've got to serve this community 18 years in an elected position, what you leave behind is really what it's all about. Did you make it better while you had authority to make it better? What's your legacy? What is our legacy going to be with this kind of project? Another failure? I'm going to tell you it's going to be very, very difficult for them to survive retail-wise. The house might be great, but I don't know how many people want to build a 2,100 square foot house in that area. It'd be better than the slab of concrete that's in the front yard right now, that's been there for forever. But just really, we need to, not only for this project, but you're talking about the other one up by the high school tonight. What is Duncanville's vision to repurpose the land that we have today? That's a hard question because things have changed probably since they were talking about zoning in 2005. We're in a whole different world today. I would encourage you to turn this down in the way it's shaped now. If they want to build the house, but not house and retail. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Bryant.
Teresa Bryant. I own the properties at 214 and 220.
State your address, please.
Pardon?
Your address, please.
220 North Main, 214 North Main. I live at 303 East Mona in Duncanville. I'm District 3 all the way around. Everyone knows me, or the majority, parking, parking, parking. I have owned that building for 35 years. It used to be my parking. Somehow the parking disappeared. Now I brought a disc. I'm sorry I didn't get it to Leslie, but I am running people off from my front door all the time. And even though TVs have come down in size to what it was when I first moved in there, they are still 60 to 150 pounds, and I don't want to have to guard my door. I mean, it's like I have to stand watch to make sure. I don't know when it became shared parking. It didn't used to be, but we have no respect in that area, because I would never go to somebody's building and pull up right in their front door when they're trying to do business while I go eat a fruit cup or get my hair cut. So I have Miss Donnie is nice. I like her fine. I hope she does well. But the parking situation is my major concern. And then, like Dan Jesperson said, the emergency vehicles cannot get down there. The man passed away. They couldn't get the ambulance and the fire truck in there at the same time. I appreciate your time. I'm asking that we revamp this or think about it a different way. I don't want to have to guard my front door. I have potentially 3 other places because I have 104, 108, and 110 West Jesperson as well, but they're all in, I have the whole corner and then 214 next door as well. So I would like to have a little bit of parking for my people. Thank you.
I'm not familiar with the addresses. I presume you're citing business addresses.
I'm across the parking lot from Dan and Mr. Jesperson. And when I come in the morning on my phone.
It's the TV shop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to get a
Yes,
visual
I own
on
the
the
TV
addresses
shop,
you're citing.
the VCR shop, and the hearing aid shop. So I do own quite a bit of property, and I own my house in District 3 as well. My family has been out here for centuries. I'm part of the Horns, the Morrises, and the Rosses. So I have a vested interest in Duncanville, and I don't want to have to guard my front door. I appreciate your time. And if you would like to look at this, this was last week. A guy pulls up in front of my door with a trailer and a pickup, and I thought he was bringing in a TV. He never walked in the door, but he's in my loading zone and down my sidewalk. And so I see him walk around the car, and he's going to the barber shop. So I followed him down and said, please move your truck from in front of my door. You can park at the end of my building. So no, he didn't do that. He pulled around the corner and took up 7 places at Dan's. And you'll see that on here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Seeing as how that is all the individuals who have requested to speak, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. What I was thinking, they've heard it all. I've closed the public hearing, allow them to, pardon me?
Actually, if they are here to support their project, they do not have to be part of the public hearing because you're allowing public comment. If they're here to support their own project, they do not have to speak during the public hearing portion.
It's up to you in terms of, you've heard all the comments. It would behoove the council to respond to those comments. I have some concerns. We've all made a few notes. So it's up to you to be part of the public hearing or to be respondent as applicants to the proposal.
So either way, they'll be able to speak, because I think.
Absolutely. I mean, they
So
are
it's just
going to
formality.
be able to speak.
It's
And
just formality.
And at the same time, even,
No, we won't have 2 minutes.
no. And even if we close the public hearing, we as council have the prerogative to call anybody back for additional comments should we so desire. So just the formality of closing the public hearing, we can move on and still have open discussion with the applicant and any individual in the audience that wishes to speak to us. Okay? So I'll entertain a motion to close the
Make a
public
motion
hearing.
to close the public hearing?
We have a motion to close the public hearing, a second, at 8:13. At 8:13, the public hearing is hereby closed. Oh, sorry, we've got a vote. Sorry. Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, I would invite the applicants to approach us, and please state your name and address as well, and talk to us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Donnie Payne. This is Karen Cherry. And we are representing Cherry Pickens in the matter of 212 North Hastings. We've heard a lot from the neighbors, but what we're proposing here on 212 is we know it's to expand the lot to provide, expand the capabilities for use of the residential neighborhood retail space. The proposed replat will expand the width of the lot by about 10 feet. So the existing lot is currently undeveloped and zoned as a residential retail, which we know. And both adjacent lots are commercially zoned as well. So what we're trying to do is actually stay in line with what's being built even across the street, because those are loft apartments as well. We're proposing to build approximately 4,200 square feet with the two-story building, and 2,100 square feet of that will be for the retail space, which was discussed it can be divided to allow for 2 businesses to utilize the space, or for 1 business to utilize the space, whatever is chosen. And then the upper space is just for 1 residential party. And it has a 2-car garage. It did say carport, but so that Miss Mary would know what's going to be there. It has a 2-car garage actually attached to the back of the property.
Well, just a moment, because when we were given the briefing, in terms of the documentation, it specifically said it was a carport. So now it is not a carport, it is a garage.
It has, yeah, it's always been a 2-car garage, like.
Then how did our documentation get changed to call it a 2-car carport?
I think maybe one of the pictures may have looked like a carport.
Ms. Shefko, do you have any idea how that got changed?
Honorable Mayor, I'm going by the elevations. It's attached to the building, and it's covered, but it shows as open on the door side. In other words, it's not fully enclosed. And it could be a carport, it could be a garage that's completely enclosed, but there's no overhead door that completely seals off the space. So it's
from one of the drawings as well.
So strictly from a visualization of a drawing?
I beg your pardon?
It's strictly the visualization from the drawing?
Yes, yes.
So your intention, it is going to be a garage, not a carport?
Yes, there will be a 2-car garage. Yes, it's attached.
Do we have that language in the documentation for the backup that actually says it's carport? Mr. Ramey, you know, or Athena? I think it's important because we're dichotomous in terms of definitions here.
So, yeah, so the bottom line is the documentation that we have that's part of our thing still shows that this is open. So what we would request is that if it truly is a garage, then we would need to see new elevations and new drawings that are more clarified, because again, right now, the drawings that we show say it's open. So that would be a carport, not a garage.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we'll provide, I guess, new renderings to show that it's a 2-car garage, or drawings necessary for that. And on the front, off of the street, we are going to provide 4 parking spaces to support the parking for the business off of Hastings. And the project will benefit the city of Duncanville. It will increase the taxes generated by this property. As of now, it's a vacant lot, so the property taxes were very low. I don't even know if it was $500 for this past year. But being able to have something would increase the property taxes at least, and whatever taxes are generated by the retail space as well. It'll add economical commercial retail options for the area, employment opportunities for people who live in Duncanville, and Duncanville residents the opportunity to live and work in the area if they choose so. Do you have something you want to add?
So I'm Karen Cherry at 1722 Cedar Hill Road in Duncanville. And in concern, and I appreciate the concern of, wanting the business to succeed. Donnie and I have been business owners for over 13 years, so we did research, and as far as the concern with how do you know 4 people will be able to park there, and we'll park there, we measured that out with everything else. We actually own the property lot 1A and
And
2A on West Jesperson, so.
The other
it's the
properties
same-
mentioned in the PD.
The same parking where the commercial building is, the two-story, the single, and we have the same gravel, and we don't have issues with parking. Everyone knows where, where they're allotted to park, so we haven't had any issues with that. Had that property, I guess, for over 2 years, about 2 years now, so.
We've also had it leased for the entire time. It has not been vacant, which was a concern as well. So we've been successful in that aspect too.
And what business is in there? In 1A
As
and
of
2A?
now, there's a small print shop in the building. In the commercial building. And the building next to it, the two-story house, is a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other inputs for us?
Well, we appreciate you taking time to hear us, and we're excited, and our goal is to only enhance the community, so that's what we're here for.
Okay.
I-
Questions from council?
Any thoughts on what you will put on in that retail space that you're talking about for this new bill? Do you know what's going to go there?
No, we just want to make it available as an economical solution to anyone, but it will remain within the neighborhood retail already zoned or approved business types.
So how would you market what's going to go in there for retail based upon the space? So are you looking for like your printing shops that you mentioned in your other home, or how would you market that area for your just retail itself? You're looking for restaurants, food? I'm just trying to get an idea.
No.
The things that are within the listed zoning, I don't recall a restaurant even being.
Yeah, it's
in
not
there.
a large enough space for that.
I
We need to
can
be.
tell you, a nail shop and a hair shop are the furthest things from my mind, so.
Okay.
It would be something, no, it wouldn't be another nail shop or anything.
I like the drawing. However, how does that compare to the other properties that you have right now?
Well, the color scheme is what the other properties kind of look like, because they're all gray and white or gray and red. So
Even as far, I'm sorry,
the siding.
I'm saying the street around the corner, the house on the corner, yeah.
West Jess?
No, Merrill.
Oh, Merrill
Yeah,
Street, yes.
The house used to be a yellow house on the corner, which kind of has this color. That's our property as well. So like I said, we're only trying to enhance the neighborhood.
Yeah, we just finished remodeling that property, yeah, because it was kind of an eyesore, but we were able to redevelop it, and it currently has a renter in it as well.
You had a lot of talking, you had a lot of comments about parking. Any comments from you about parking based upon what you've heard today? Any feedback to us about parking?
Well, this space will be able to utilize the parking in front. It'll be able to share that parking there, but we don't plan to have any business that would, like you stated, it wouldn't be like a restaurant or anything that would have heavy traffic. It'll be just a small residential retail type space.
We also heard something about drainage. I know that's probably not something that you looked at. I guess that's probably more so something for the Public Works to ask, to tell them about.
It's been mentioned to us, yes.
Okay.
We've been told, once it gets to that point, or if it does, we'll have to do civil engineering drawings. So the civil engineering plans will actually make it to where the drain, they're going to draw it to where it drains towards the street. In front of the bushes and things, well, we don't have it up there, but in front of the bushes on that side, they're going to actually put a drain in so it goes toward the middle and flows toward the street to prevent any flooding on the neighbors.
Okay. Mr. Schwartz?
Howard, tell me how you're planning on keeping the commercial cars out of the driveway for the residential?
It's divided by the sign you see here, so that will actually let people know where they can park, and the rest is the actual driveway for the residential space.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, but more than likely, if somebody's going to run in there and there's a driveway right there, they'll just pull in that driveway because it will be on your property, or they may think that there's parking in back, which is that kind of segues into my next question. It's just something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Since you own that property, And then you own, if I understood, you own the house around the corner as you go to the next street, excuse me, on Merrill. There's a unused alley in there, which is 15 feet of right-of-way that runs behind, separates the residential on the east side from your property. Have you considered approaching the city to abandon that to you, since you own both sides of it? And you might be able to come in from the rear and get some more parking by using that alleyway, which is not used. It's just sitting out there, something to mow. Again, just something to think about.
Well, we have discussed it and even mentioned doing something joint with, Ms. Mary at one point. We haven't put anything on paper, but we've discussed it like as neighbors. But if the city is willing to do that, we would definitely put in whatever paperwork is necessary to expand that parking lot and ease up some of the strain from the concerns of the neighbors with the parking concerns.
Yeah, we're always willing to sell surplus.
Thank you for bringing that
Yes.
up.
4 years ago, when this came up, I had just gotten on the council, and there was a lot of concern about a two-story building with the windows looking over into the property on the south side. I notice your building has got, 3 windows and a porch, I guess, out there. One of those windows is probably out of a bathroom. I'm assuming the smaller window is probably a restroom. But, and I'm probably the reason that you're here tonight, because I asked that this come back to us when it developed so we could ensure that there's the privacy of the adjoining property was upheld. So I still have a bit of a problem with the windows, a two-story window looking down into the backyard of the neighbor on the south side. And I don't know if you can design around that, or you have any thoughts on that?
Well, that's the reason we did the design that we have, so it will be more the side of the house. So anything built there would still have windows on the side of the house. So they would enter through the back, and that was to make it a little less intrusive on either property. So.
Well, you did move it north, because you've got the driveway on the south side, which gives you some more distance from the property line.
Yes, but even the entrance is that's actually just the side of the house, so it'd be versus the front of a house looking at a property.
Yes, yeah.
And that was to make it just a little less intrusive, so people wouldn't feel like their neighbor could possibly be just preying on them. Hastings.
Yeah, and it's not the downstairs that I'm concerned about, it's the upstairs. So if design-wise something could be done there, I would be a lot more comfortable with the project. And I think we all recognize the zoning is already there. We're not talking about zoning tonight. We're talking about a site plan for the way you're going to develop it. So that's just my comments. Thank you.
Question more for our Public Works Director, Mr. Ramey. Going to a comment that was made about the parking surface being decomposed granite. The comment was made, how do you stripe granite? So in terms of defining 4 parking spaces, it's kind of a valid, it has some merit in terms of how would the owners define those 4 parking spaces so that somebody's not taking up 2 because it's just decomposed granite.
Well, I agree. You cannot really paint it. So the things that just sort of come to mind right now, one is curb stops. That would sort of delineate it. They could also probably put in some kind of, more of a harder surface that would be embedded, and then they would just sort of, set the lane to be maybe brick or something, and that's how they would delineate the differences between them.
Okay.
I don't
There are alternatives
there are ways to sort of
delineate
maintain
the 4 spaces.
a decomposed granite, for the majority of it. But if the concern is, to make sure that it's, the 4 is 4 and not,
2.5.
3 people parking more broadly, Typically, what I've done in gravel parking lots is to annotate that I wanted to be very particular on delineating spaces. I would use curb stops. You know, from my experience, I think depending on, you know, some other aesthetic, you know, maybe that something else embedded in there would be something that, you know, I would defer to them to consider as well. So, I hope that
Okay,
answers your
thank you.
question.
Thank you. That satisfies my question. Mr. Cooks?
I'm not sure who can answer this, but I just want to answer, is there any city violations or code violations in property 1A or 2A that they're currently living in right now, or establishing right now?
Are you asking if there's any open code
Yes, is there
violations
any
at those
any-
properties?
Yes.
There are not any that I am aware of. Typically, the ones that, you know, I'm usually only aware of the cases that are larger in scale than that. I would have to actually query that with the code officer assigned to that district for, I would say, minor code violations.
So this
if
is
any,
fit-
I don't know.
This is fitting into what the area was planned for, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, this particular zoning was already set.
Already set,
And so,
okay.
yeah, so we're really, correct me if I'm wrong, city attorney, what we're really talking about today, the use has already been set previously.
Okay.
It's really, do we like this particular application, you know, the 2 stores with the gray siding and
Okay.
things to that nature, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Then,
That is correct. Today's, we're just limited to the approval of this particular site plan, not whether or not the particular zoning, that's already been decided.
okay, thank you. I do have a question for Councilman Swart, since he mentioned that he was on the council before. Councilman Swart, you mentioned to them that you want this to come back. Now after coming back, is it meeting your intentions of your desire for them to come back to relook at this? Now it's time to build the other one? What was your intentions when you asked them to come back in 2 years?
Well, 4 years ago,
4 years.
my intention was to do exactly what we're doing tonight. I wanted to see the site plan to protect the property owners that were already out there. I think we owed it to them when we passed the zoning, and they didn't have plans for this particular lot at that time. I asked that the P&Z and the council see the site plan for this lot. So that's what we're doing tonight.
So you're pretty comfortable with what you requested as being,
Well,
based
yes.
upon your
I
other
mean,
comments?
we've accomplished seeing what they're proposing.
All right, thank you.
And while my mic's on, I will say that the decomposed granite is a much better material to let water through. We're talking about drainage. You won't get as much runoff from it as you would if it were concrete. So it's actually a good surface for what we're trying to do, is keep water from running to the south there, because they're going to have to build a curb or do something to force the water out to the street.
So no civil engineering drawings have been as yet submitted. This is strictly just the site plan in terms of intended use of the property.
Yes, sir, that is correct. We would not anticipate receiving any civil drawings or anything beyond what we've seen tonight until council chooses to approve this PD.
Okay, Ms. Jameson?
So, Greg, is the reason why it went before P&Z was it was parking also, was it not?
Well, I can't comment to the exact particulars of the parking. The reason why I went to P&Z and it's coming to council again is because it was required as a planned development. My understanding regarding the parking is that, you know, this fits 4, but its proximity and the assumption that we are operating on by its adjacency to the city's public parking, that any, fifth or 6th customer would park in the city's parking lot that we've provided in the downtown district. And so, given the proximity of the city-owned parking, the four parking lots in front of the store was sufficient, subject, you know, with the rest of the parking.
So, City Attorney, do you understand why it went before P&Z?
That's required of the process. So they were asking that their site approval plan get approved by P&Z. Are you asking whether parking was an issue that was brought
Yes.
before P&Z? I mean, based on the information that we have in our packet, it looks like there was comments about parking that was brought up. But again, you know, P&Z heard those, and the P&Z actually approved the site plan.
Well, I understand P&Z approved it, but I'm just curious on what all was entailed when it went before P&Z. So it was the site plan, because it is also the product that was used on, like the siding, the hardy board, was that also included? And the gravel, the granite?
Well, the reason why I went to P&Z in general is because as part of a plan development review, it is a two-phase process. And so when they presented all the, you know, what they were looking for, both in terms of the aesthetic that you see presented and the floor plan and the site plan, the landscaping plan, that was all, you know, part of the whole process of getting it to y'all tonight in terms of for your consideration, including, you know, the parking, the decomposed granite, and I can't remember what else you were asking for, but yes, all
The
those.
siding.
The signage, well, drainage is not part of the process at this exact time. Drainage is always a requirement for the city, but making sure that a particular lot meets the criteria for drainage is that is an engineering review process that's done once we get past the approval stage, which is where we're here tonight. So we wouldn't be really looking at drainage or how they plan to capture and control runoff at this location until after we advance to the actual construction of this project.
Okay, but it seems like there still is an issue about parking.
Well, there is a concern. I guess there's two different pieces to this in terms of from the city's perspective as presented. You know, when with Chassie was here, and then corroborated through the planning and zoning approval process, was that the you know, I guess the assumption made through the whole process that the 4 on-site parking spots plus city's existing parking spots that are already made available would be sufficient for this particular project.
But you don't usually use other people's parking no matter.
Well, it's city right-of-way, so it's no different in terms of, you know, perceived use. For example, in a neighborhood, there's the right-of-way is available for everybody, so that's there's nothing to keep me as, you know, any citizen from parking in front of any other citizen's house.
Yeah, I understand that, but when you have a retail or commercial business, normally you have planned for enough parking for that business. It's required.
Yes, ma'am, and as you look at, you know, different locations have different requirements, and so when you're looking at most areas, the requirement, we'll use the example, that church property that we looked at a previous council meetings, that because of where it was at in that particular location, the parking that was available was insufficient, and therefore they had to present, you know, they went out and got a shared parking agreement. In the case of the downtown district and that vicinity, the assumption is that the city parking, which is basically all the parking along Main Street, is available for everybody to use. And by virtue of that, shared parking, a shared parking arrangement really already exists in that vicinity because everybody has the ability to park in city-owned parking.
Then I guess I'm struggling with why we heard all of the issues about parking.
Councilmember Jameson,
That
could I-
there's a problem.
If I could interject, the parking was a concern that was brought up. It is something that you can consider and discuss. The PD itself, because it's a planned development, you have that ability to decide what you want to do on those. I think what Greg is also saying, because of the proximity to the downtown district in itself does not have parking requirements for each business like you're used to with other zoning categories, where each business has to provide enough parking for its use. In the downtown district zoning itself, it does not have that requirement because the vision of the downtown district was that it would be walkable, that there would be public parking in various areas, and so there is not a requirement for each business to provide its own parking for its use. So I think when this PD came before the council 4 years ago, that was also part of that discussion, was the parking. Would there be adequacy? Because I believe, if I recall, there was discussion about the parking spaces on those properties as well. But I think that the thought process was because of the proximity to the downtown district and the proximity to that public parking area, that would be sufficient. And that is, again, that is a consideration of the council with this. The PD by itself does not require the parking, nor does the downtown district require a certain amount of parking. So it's, again, it's your consideration in determining how you feel about this proposed site
Well,
plan.
I want to know what can be done if, for instance, and I mean, you don't know this, but if you had a business that all of a sudden became very popular and you had all these need for parking, what do we do?
What? Well, I guess we would have to play that by ear.
That's more a question for
Okay.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would hope that the business would become popular, just like all
I mean,
other
where are we going to
businesses
put
in
them?
the area.
And when they start getting really mad because there's no parking?
We don't anticipate on anyone getting mad about parking. There's, like I said, there are options even with our parking on the other side on Hastings Street. So there are parking options.
With your commercial properties
With
that
our
are
commercial-
adjacent, is there room for overflow? For somebody to park in front of your own commercial properties to be a patron of your retail business on the lower floor?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes. So, actually, I was gonna say, sometimes they get really busy over at the shop, and sometimes I come around the corner and there are people parking there. If no one's there, I don't mind people parking there. Like I said, it's a community.
But the problem is, you just said, if no one's there, you don't mind. We've already had some.
No, I'm saying in front of our property.
I understand. We've already had some issues where, like, people were using parking after 5 o'clock at night, assuming that the businesses were not being used, the parking lot. And in fact, the owner of the business was the president of a club and had the club meeting there at night and was furious about them parking in their parking places.
Okay.
So parking is a big
Yeah, like I said,
issue.
we've been there for a couple of years, and we know how parking gets around the area, and so, like I said, we did our research. We aren't concerned with parking, and even with, sticking with the PD, what it says as far as the size building that we're building, what is it, 500 feet per
The 4
parking
spaces
lot?
is
So
adequate.
with our 4 spaces.
For the
it's
2,000 square
yeah,
feet.
we're in compliance with the size of the building that we're building.
And businesses do get busy, so there are times where we all have to be flexible and share the space at times, just like our space is there for them to utilize whenever they need it, or anything that's for this ordinance. We have the additional parking spaces available because it can be shared across both properties. So we have 8 off of West Jesperson and then the 4 spaces there. So it will still be adequate, and if 1 or 2 cars go over, then it is shared parking.
And we will be respectful of
Very
the residential part not going down the other way. Because, I mean, we understand their concerns, and we respect Ms. Mary's concerns.
Mr. LeBlanc?
Well, can you tell me again the other two businesses? What's the other two businesses that you have?
The one is the commercial building, which is a
It's a print shop.
Print shop?
I was gonna say t-shirt.
And the
One
other?
is a print shop and the other is a bed and breakfast.
Bed and breakfast, okay. Okay. And you said which one of those you mentioned had 8 parking spots?
They're all connected?
They're connected?
Yes.
So the two of those share 8?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that's the overflow that I was.
Right. And I guess when
Thinking
I'm
about.
thinking that the new building, this building here, you're going to have 4. So does that include the parking for whoever is the proprietor or the owner to park there as well? Or
Of the
they'll park?
residential space?
No. The person that whatever business is in there, the
Right.
business owner, will they have those 4? Will 1 or 2 of those be for them?
Probably.
We would encourage them to park on the other side to allow those spaces
To
for
allow
their
those
customers.
4
Yes.
for your patrons?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And I don't know if this is a Richard question but if it's mixed, will they fall into 2 different tax brackets? One for the business and then one for the residents, or how does that work?
That would have to be determined by the appraisal district, but in all likelihood, it would be zoned commercial, or appraised at commercial, I
Commercial.
believe.
Even though the apartment is on top?
I'm not absolutely sure
Sure,
how that
okay.
works with the appraisal district. I'd have to ask that question of them.
Well, that kind of, well, I don't know why this just kicked off in my mind when you said apartment, but it's intended for that upper floor to be an apartment, or someone could actually purchase that as a
An
residence?
apartment.
It is an apartment, so it will be
Yes.
a rental property?
Yes, it's a rental property.
Okay.
Well, they have a garage.
Well, they have the garage.
and
They've got a
carport,
two-car
she said,
garage.
Yeah, the garage. Correct?
So there are a total of 6 parking spaces on this one.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Thomas?
Yes, thank you for investing in our city. Thank you for this wonderful addition to that neighborhood. I remember when it got brought back, the first time it was here, and drainage was a big issue. And I see that the structure's been moved. And that will, I guess I need to ask Greg. So you said the drainage issue, y'all will be watching it closely? Because currently, the property just to the south, their carport floods. And that's just a recent development within a year or two. And it hasn't been flooding, and now it's flooding. So whatever happened over there the last year or so is causing this carport to flood. So we need to be conscious about that, because you know what happened at the school is that things happened, and now they're dealing with flooding. So what is your process in ensuring that there won't be any flooding on the property next door? Also realizing that they may want to develop that lot next to this, and with that understanding.
So in general, for overall process, as part of the review process, that would, I'm going to just sort of walk through the process. So we'll assume this is approved, just for, at least for the example. Once they're cleared through the zoning process, then the development review begins in terms of we get their site civil plans, which we, in turn, examine for drainage, as well as all the other, how they're tying in the infrastructure. We're also looking at the architectural drawings and the building itself, and making sure that's all cleared as well. And so that would be part of that process.
It was said that it's going to drain onto the street. Now, that street doesn't have curb and gutters. And I'm correct, right? So if it drains,
That's correct.
So if it drains on the street, it's just out there, and it could go towards the business on the other side of the street, or it could go, I think it goes downhill south, right? So it could go that way. So how are we going, if there's no rain event while they're putting this in, which Texas is known for that, there's no way of knowing? I'm asking, is there a way of knowing that there won't be a drainage issue?
Well, the way it works in terms of, I haven't looked at the drainage of this particular plot yet because we haven't advanced to that stage. So again, I'll talk more in generalities. When the civil engineer that prepares and seals these drawings, he has looked at the elevations and the topography and, in consultant with us and where the storm inlets are and the grades. That's when we have that conversation of how are we going to get the water there. And in terms of how do we calculate that ahead of time as well, they just use their software programs and, and known rainfall events to calculate that.
You may be able to answer this or not, I don't know, but what is the recourse for the property owner to the south of that should they have flooding? And the reason why I asked is because Mrs. Bryant, the TV store, she had water coming in her door every time there was a rain event, and it took several years for that to be corrected. And, it finally did get corrected, am I right? Yeah, it finally did get corrected, but it took years. So that is an issue, and it has been an issue in that area.
Well, I agree. You asked about recourse in general, and so if this building is built and it turns out that it's flooding, there would be two questions that I would ask. One is it something in the city's infrastructure that we have to address, or if it's something with we'll say a bad design or bad execution on it. This would be in the immediate term. Then that would be something that we would have to be addressed through the engineer who designed it, because it would be a design flaw.
Okay, so
or it would be an execution flaw on the construction side.
So are you confident that you could have proper drainage at this property so that it doesn't affect the southern property?
Well, I'm confident that the engineer that does the design and seals it and puts his stamp on it is the accountable person for this job.
But you don't foresee any problems with the topography and the infrastructure?
I don't see any particular problems with any particular lot. In general, I would say that, again, the accountable person, the one who owns the design and who would be, say in trouble if it does fail, is the engineer whose design is on there. They're the ones that are licensed. They're the ones that carry the malpractice insurance, et cetera, if they have a design bust.
Okay.
Other than that, if it does get an arson, which, we've got to do our shaping of ditches, or maybe there's an inlet that has to be cleaned out, again, that would be something that the city would examine, but, we review the design, but we do not own the design.
Okay.
And we do make sure, to the best of our ability, that.
Greg, we've got an
it's
answer.
Design.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for putting in granite. I remember when I was on the council, we first approved the other properties, and we allowed granite in there. I understand that granite is just as expensive as concrete, and with the overuse of concrete, we're creating a desert space. The water runs off, it doesn't get into our ground, and we have virtual deserts in the city space. So I thank you for putting the granite in. As far as parking, I understand that there's parking issues towards the Ben Franklin, because it's very popular, and that other businesses around in that area have issues having parking spaces. And I am talking with the city manager to address that. Whether or not this is approved or not, that's unacceptable. So we'll get that issue addressed. As far as parking, also, please look into the property that's not being used, the alley behind you. and put that to use for your business and maybe more parking for that. Really, thank you. I mean, I wish we had one of these every week that we could approve in the city of Duncanville. People willing to put their money at risk in our community. It's been said that it will probably fail, but I don't think so. It's nice. It's in a good location. People in Duncanville, I think, will embrace this walkability, living, working space. And again, I thank you.
I just wanted to comment that the project itself conforms to the city's desire for walkability for the Main Street corridor. And that came across in our comp plan. And so I see this particular project is complementing the walkability for our Main Street area. The issue of who's going to occupy that lower floor, we would rely on your extreme expertise to bring a lessee, an entrepreneur into that is going to complement our Main Street corridor as well. You yourself said it's not going to be nail and hair. So we're going to hold you to that. That's on the record.
I think there are 4 right there.
Okay.
Carrie Cherry.
I'm ready to close this, but Mr. McBurnett.
One of my concerns, again, has to do with Ms. Mays' property and the privacy and that stuff. 6-foot fence, would you consider having a higher fence?
Over 6 feet?
Yeah,
That's-
8 foot.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Okay.
It's just-
Does code allow an 8 foot
Yeah,
in that
that's what
particular
I'm
area?
talking about, like it's really high.
It's a PD.
Catching my memory, but I believe that 8 foot is allowed on the side.
Okay.
Close to the street.
Okay.
If they run out of space, Mayor, for the cars.
Mike, please.
If they run out of space for cars, you can always put a bike thing there. You can put people can ride a bike and ride a bike from there. Just thought I'll share that.
Thank you. Is it?
Okay, seeing as there's no further discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 212 Hastings Street ordinance amending existing P&D plan development district, ordinance 2259.
Yeah. We have a motion to approve, and we have a second.
Does that include the 8-foot fence?
Oh.
There's a possibility of the consideration for the carport versus the closed two-door, or
Yes,
two-car
the-
garage. We
Yeah,
can add
that
as a
carport, it
condition.
must be a 2-car garage.
So if you'll add that to, I'd like to add that to my motion.
In the fence.
And the 8-foot fence.
And the possibility of the 8-foot fence, provided it conforms to code within that area.
He said it was code, so you.
Well, just making sure that
Yeah, so
conditional upon,
8-foot fence.
So an 8-foot fence. as long as it
permissible
complies
within
with
code, right. Okay, please vote. Thank you. We welcome your business to our city. Moving on to item number 5B. Consider approval of an ordinance abandoning a portion of Tower Crest Drive to the abutting property owners, being the surface travel portion of surface rights as described and depicted in Exhibit A, providing for the furnishing of a certified copy of this ordinance for recording in the real property records of Dallas County, Texas, as a quitclaim deed. Mr. Ramey.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Again, just before I start my briefing, I just want to let you know that the developer is here, and he'll be available at the end of my briefing if, in the event that you all have any questions for him.
I need to ask a question of our attorneys at the outset. the issues of whether graves still exist on site, can we move into executive session to discuss that?
We can.
I would like to do that, please, if we could. So it's 8:59. We will recess City Council and move into executive session. Okay, we are reconvening the Duncanville City Council, April 2nd, 2019 at 9:14. Pursuant to the actions taken out in executive session, I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the judgment and adjudication concerning the use of the property as a cemetery.
So this is entitled Final Judgment in cause number DC 18-08066. The court, having reviewed the evidence presented and the statements contained therein, the exhibits presented, and the arguments of counsel, is of the opinion that the agreement of the parties is well-founded and the relief sought should be granted. It is therefore ordered, adjudged, and decreed that the tract of land described in Exhibit A, attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference, as if fully set forth at length, and more commonly known as 700 West Camp Wisdom Road, Duncanville, Texas, 75116, shall have its designation as a dedicated cemetery property removed and no longer be restricted or used as a cemetery. Signed this 15th day of November 2018 by the judge presiding.
Thank you. So any concern over bodies remaining is dispelled. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ramey, moving on to item 5B. It's already read into the record.
Yes, sir, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, the purpose of this is for Council to consider approval of a requested right-of-way abandonment for a section of Tower Crest. I just wanted to just do a quick site overview. A larger copy of the map was presented to you at the beginning of the evening. But just to orient, this is 700 West Camp Wisdom Road. The red annotates the right-of-way segment that has been requested for abandonment. And then the yellow box here represents the property owned by the church. As you'll see in your, you saw from the minutes as well, that we did get concurrence from the church in in support of the abandonment. Again, this is also just the survey. It's the Exhibit A that's referenced in the proposal for your consideration. Just some of the background for this site. Again, Paleo Partners is the developer, and they're operating on behalf of the owner of 700 Camp Wisdom Road. And as you saw in your packet, there was the document annotated to that amount. So they're requesting that we abandon a portion that we were showing before of Tower Crest to allow for better development at that location. The street segment, as we talked about, is used marginally. It's currently only a one-lane exit onto Cedar Ridge Drive. And then by abandoning this, it allows more land for 700 Camp Wisdom so that we have more development options at that location. And then if you approve this, the city will negotiate the sale price based on the property's appraised value, which was also a staff report. The residents that currently have houses along Tower Crest Drive. So let me go back to this one. So the residents we're talking about are these folks right here. They still have access to Camp Wisdom. And then if you approve the right-of-way, as part of the replatting process, we would rededicate the land so that we would have a cul-de-sac that would be prepared whenever the property is developed. And in the meantime, the residents would be able to use Tower Crest Drive as that exit, as well as any emergency vehicles. As mentioned before, Paleo Partners did receive consent from the owner of the other 3 lots that are currently vacant, which were part of the church property. The reason why we went to talk to them is because currently these are still separate plats that were zoned residential, and so we wanted to make sure that the owner of that, which is the Bible Fellowship, had no designs on ever needing to do anything with those parcels. So that's what we wanted to make sure we did not block them in. Oh.
So the part that belongs to Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, can they get out onto Cedar Ridge Road?
So this is the Bible Fellowship.
The Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship.
Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship owns the land, but it is leased to Bat Zion Church, and they get in and out through Rolling Ridge, so they don't exit here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
And this whole property is fenced by either by Bat Zion, but the fence that parcel is fenced in its entirety.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So again, the staff is recommending approval of the abandonment of the segment of Tower Crest Drive. As I mentioned before, the Paleo Partners is here tonight if you have any questions for him.
I have a question for you. In the letter that went to the residents explaining what was going to be happening, and if I recall, we had, of the 15 that were queried with the letter, we had 4 or 5, depending on, or no, that was the other property, wasn't it?
Correct.
That was the other one. Oh. Got it. Okay. Worn out. So then bring me up to speed then on the letters that went to the residents abutting Tower Crest Drive. What was the responses we got from those individuals?
Well, we did not, because it was a city right-of-way, we did not notify anybody other than the owner of the parcels that would be, that abut this location.
Is in Dallas.
Understand. Okay.
No, he asked a question.
Okay. No, it's fine. Okay.
Actually, let me go back to the overall map. I think that was the one that we had the most conversation about.
How many residents live in that?
Well, Ms. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, so you said you didn't send out letters.
Yes, ma'am.
You did
That's
not send. And what is the reason why you didn't send out letters?
The bottom line is because that particular section of the road was used minimally, and then that the 5 residents along that street would still have access to Camp Wisdom.
As the city attorney, why is the reason that they did not send out letters?
Because as a council, you guys actually approved proposed policy and procedure when you abandoned right-of-ways back in 2017. And under that procedure you followed, the only person that needs to be talked to or questioned are the landowners that abut the actual right-of-way, which would be the church that they spoke with, and that's why they provided that letter.
So nothing illegal has been done? Nothing has been done outside of?
No.
That's pretty standard.
We're procedurally competent.
We are procedurally competent.
Okay. Mr. Cooks.
How many houses is in that land that we're talking about?
It appears to be, there's 4 houses that open up onto Tower Crest.
Those 4.
This one here has a driveway that goes to Camp Wisdom, and these are all Camp Wisdom.
Okay. So 4 is, so if we're talking about impact, 4 residents will be impacted by that, right? So there's no other 4 houses will be impacted. Okay, all right, thanks.
Ms. Jameson.
Yes, Are there two of them? Yours also?
Yeah. Just a moment. We invite you to speak. We welcome you, but you need to come up to the mic so we have you on record. So please come up.
This is not actually open for public hearing.
Well, because of
He can if
the
he wants.
sensitivity of this, I'm going to allow it. Do we need to record that in terms of time or anything like that? That
We
I'm
would.
creating a public hearing?
Are you going to open this for public hearing?
I feel you need to.
If you feel
So
you need
then-
to.
Go ahead.
If you feel you need to, you just need to open it for public hearing, make the motion that allowed anybody who wants to speak. But again, it's not on the agenda for public hearing. And so I would also caution against that because the way that the agenda has been noticed is not as a public hearing.
Hey, our charter says that the mayor runs the meeting and that he can allow any citizen to speak at any time. It's his call.
That is correct, you
can I-
can, but if you open it for public hearing, then that means anybody here is allowed to speak on it as a public hearing. And again, it's not, you did not, the agenda does not say
Didn't
it's open
post
for
it as a
public
public
hearing.
hearing.
Okay.
Which means that you probably could not take action. You would actually have to table it and wait until you have another opportunity, if you were gonna open this matter for public hearing,
Oh, I see
to
what you're
allow that other citizens to come at the next time you open it for public hearing to comment as well.
So, to make sure I understand, I cannot ask a citizen for input without opening it for public hearing.
That is correct.
Please sit down.
We need to table this. This is wrong.
Any other questions from council?
I'm also,
Yeah,
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we
Table this
table the item.
and have a public
and-
hearing.
And we did open up a public hearing, including hearing from who all wants to speak on this item.
Please
Second.
understand that, what I'm trying to do is make sure that we as a council follow our own rules and procedures. And I think advice from our city attorney was that I would be augmenting something that we don't have a right to do.
No, I agree. That's
So
fine.
the
Yeah,
right,
we
the
understand.
right thing, I just want you to all understand.
We understand.
I'm not putting a gag order on our citizens. I think, as you said, as I said, I wanted to hear what was said, because I think it's important that we do that. I didn't have the right legal opportunity in policies and procedures to do that. So we now have a motion on the
To
table.
table.
Mr. Cooks,
second.
please state it again.
Make a motion that we table item 5B.
Second.
We have a motion on the table a motion and a second to table this particular item and open it for rediscussion at some later date. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion is approved to table it. So that there's an understanding of what's just happened. In order to be legal, we will post on the agenda again. This item will come up again, and it will be posted as a public hearing, and that will put us in legal compliance. Okay?
That is correct. That way, all citizens have the opportunity to be heard if they wish to be, and it's properly noticed, so they have that opportunity.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Item 5C, consider an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Duncanville, Texas by amending Chapter 2, open quotes, administration, close quotes, by adding new Article 4, open quotes, record management program, close quotes, establishing regulations pertaining to the preservation, protection, storage, use, and disposition of city records. You, Mr. Hugman, or is it City Secretary? City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. This is to add to the records management program to allow the city to become up to date with the Texas State Library and Archives Commission standards pertaining to the preservation and disposition of any and all city records, allowing the city to become more electronically friendly.
Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6A, receive the monthly financial report as of February 28th, 2019. Mr. Summerlin.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Excuse me. So to dive right in, February is the 5th month of the year, and so we would expect to be at about 42% as a benchmark toward our revenues and our expenditures. I do want to make a note that according to the beginning fund balance that was provided in your financial report, that included in there is our community services fund balance and also our one-time project fund balance, and that's in compliance with reporting requirements under GASB 54 that essentially they redefined the definitions of the general fund. So that general fund ending unreserved fund balance is $19.4 million, which is 234 days of operations. That's $6.1 million in excess of the benchmark 75-day reserve. But keep in mind that as we earn revenues for which are primarily through property tax, they're collected up front at the beginning of the year. And so then we're spending down as we go throughout the year from that. So we're expected to have a much larger fund balance because expenditures are not linear with the collection of the revenue. We have current property tax collections at 96% of the budget, and our sales tax revenues at 24% of the budget, and overall our general fund expenditures are at 34%, a bit below that benchmark. If you look at it graphically, the purple line's the 2019 budget on a linear fashion. If it was earned consistently over time, of course it's not. The blue line is the previous three-year average, and the red line is what we have so far to date in this fiscal year. And you can see that we have that huge influx of revenues because of property tax during that December, January, February timeframe. We'll look at our general fund revenue, again lasering out the property tax from all the other revenues, and you see that same trend pattern. If you look at our expenditures, same graphical depiction as we had on the revenues. You can see that the red line is well below the trend line if we earned or if we spent money consistently in a linear fashion over time, and just a little bit below the three-year average. Our utility fund summary is our other big fund that we keep a very close watch on. The utility fund ending unreserved fund balance is $6.9 million. That's 135 days of operations, about $3 million in excess of the 60-day reserve target that we have for the utility fund. And of course, reminder that our utility and solid waste revenues are 1 month behind, so there's only 4 months reflected here. And our overall utility fund expenditures are about 38% of the budget, so again, below that 42% benchmark. Same depiction as we had on the general fund. These are our utility fund revenues, and so they're just above that three-year average, but definitely below during the warmer months when there's higher usage of water. Then you'll see that we'll cross over that trend line. And then our utility fund expenditures, they are the same depiction as the revenues. The red line represents what our actuals are, and again, we're trending below the linear approach. Our one-time project funds, we've reclassified those into these types of categories. And again, this is part of our new reporting system that we have with our new Munis software. And essentially the columns there show in the middle column up here, excuse me, this middle column here shows what the budget was, and this shows what was spent to date, and then this is what's remaining. With that, I'll take any questions.
I didn't see sales tax receipts up here.
Sales tax are a part of.
You said that you received 24% of the budget in 3 months, but I didn't see compared to last year. Usually you have a little graph, a little bar graph.
The sales tax I didn't laser out from the others. The sales tax, of course, is included in the general fund revenues. That's all inclusive of everything, property tax and sales tax. If you look on the financial report that I provided there, it details out every line item that's part of the general fund revenues.
Do you recall what percentage we're at? Usually we get a percentage, we're at 5% more, we're flat?
We're actually running at this point in time about 1% below the prior year.
Okay, can you, is there, and I've noticed this last time, that's why I was keyed in on it, we seem to be running less. So is there a reason, do you have a reason why?
Well, yes, I don't know that I can talk in great specifics about particular industries that are particular businesses rather that are affected. We know that the housing industry has slowed down. It's not dead, but it's certainly slowed down from the pace that it was.
So that would affect the sales?
Our businesses are highly dependent on. This may be a Jessica question, but I'm sure you would know too. The fact that DeFord's moved a considerable amount of their taxable business into Dallas, did that impact the sales tax in Duncanville to the extent that that it could account for the negative percentage? We haven't even seen the full effects of that yet. We will, in future months, we will feel the full impact of that.
Our data at this point is 3 months in arrears.
Correct.
So we're actually looking at, December, January sales, which
yeah.
is seasonally low anyway.
Yeah. So what you're saying is true, but we just haven't seen the impact of that show up yet. But we're already starting to feel a decline even before that.
Is there any way that we can get some financial certainty in that area? As far as facts, do we know, do we have to wait till, are we reactionary or are we proactive in this? That's what I'm at.
Well, I can say that our economic development director has been in conversations with them and trying to ascertain what that amount might be. So we don't have firm numbers, and of course, as a company, they don't have to share numbers with us if they don't want to, but we're trying to get an idea, and a lot of it will depend on whether they can run the sales through here or not, through their Duncanville office, but we do believe that there will be an impact.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions. First quarter, item 6B, first quarter investment report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This report, we started off at 9/30/2018 with about $32.5 million in investments. We had purchases of $12 million of investments, and then we had maturities or taking away of $7 million during that time period. Our investments at 12/31/2018 were $37.7 million. To look at that a little bit further, our investments by type, 32% are in CDs, 30% in logic, 38% in money markets. And then if we look at that by maturity, you can see that I primarily keep everything pretty much liquid, 27.7 million under 30 days, and then 90 to 180 days at 3 million, and then 7 million I have invested out further on the curve to 180 days to 1 year. This is a summary sheet, if you will, of what makes up that 37.7 million. Logic is one of the major pools, government investment pools that we get in and or that we invest in, and the 2.43% was the yield at December 31. Then I have two money markets, one with Southside and one with Next Bank, 4 million, 10 million, 2.3 and 2.4 on those money markets. Text pool, I have a very minuscule amount in, that's another government pool, and then I have the rest of this laddered out into various CDs, Third Coast, Texas Security Bank, and then Legacy Bank, and various yields there. This 1.59 was one that matured in January, and we've already reinvested that at a much higher rate. That was one of the ones that was a little bit low. And I always like to chart out our percentage, which this blue line up here is the city's portfolio, and I benchmarked that against the red line, which is 90-day T-bill, and then tax pool, which is the other investment pool, is much lower, and that's why I don't keep too much money in it. And the green line is the logic pool. That's the big pool. And so you can see that for the most part, we mirrored that because we keep pretty high balances in. During November, we were a little bit below, a couple basis points below that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question. Are we, as a city, under any restriction by GASB or anything else that puts us in the categories of our portfolio are very risk averse?
Yes, they are.
Low risk, low yield. Is there anything that precludes us from looking at more higher risk, higher yield investments?
Yes, there is. There's a thing called the Public Funds Investment Act, in which I have every 2 years the pleasure of having a 10-hour course to sit through that, and so does the city manager and assistant city manager.
I think the mayor would like to go to that course.
And it's very clear.
If I get CE credit, I mean, well, you know.
Well, you can get CE credit. I'll sign you up. It absolutely is a risk averse. That has to be one of the priorities under the Public Funds Investment Act.
Okay.
All your investments.
Just curious. Sorry?
Got to protect his
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, as a personal investor, you have a portfolio, usually break it into 5 different categories. And so you protect yourself on one end, but at the same time you expose yourself on the other. So
I appreciate your personal.
I'm just, never mind. Okay, I'm done. Okay. Any other questions of Richard? No, okay. All right, moving on to item 6C. A new face before us. And as we told the last lieutenant that came before us, Lieutenant McCaleb, we do not bite. But this
I'm probably not sweating as much as he was.
This is Lieutenant Chris McCaleb, and welcome, and we're looking forward to getting your report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate the opportunity to present the Police Department quarterly report. Just to preface this real quick, due to the early date of this council meeting, this is only going to cover January and February, so March will not be covered in this. On February the 13th, recruits Tiffany Manning and Ambrosio Hernandez graduated from the North Texas Council of Governments Regional Police Academy. Once they completed that, we put them through an intensive month-long in-service training. They were sworn in as police officers on March the 8th and begin their field training on March the 10th. We do anticipate having 4 new hires attend that same academy sometime mid-April. And with some increases in staffing, Officer Kamicha Johnston was reassigned back to the park officer position on March the 10th. And I know that's going to make a lot of people happy. She's been out of that position for a while.
And what does that put our staffing at?
With moving her back, we restaffed CID with 1 detective, and then we filled our second traffic position. Being able to do that was with putting 3 more people on the street. So they completed their field training.
Or just the bottom line, how many vacancies have we got?
Right now, we have 10.
We still have 10?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And our Special Services Division is working really hard to try to get those filled, so. So on February the 16th, we had a civil service test. We had 158 individuals registered to take that test. 92 came and sat for the test, and of that 92, 38 passed the written examination, and those are the ones that we're currently working on background investigations for. And out of that 38 is where the 4 that we're hoping to send to the academy in the middle of the month.
So those 4 are not part of the 10? In other words, if those 4 would bring it up to 6?
No, ma'am. Those four actually have, to my knowledge, have not actually been given jobs yet.
Okay.
So they're
So
kind of
should
still
they
in
be
the
hired?
process. It's kind of quick.
Okay, so should they get hired, we'll be down just 6?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Why 4 and not 10?
The process takes a while to make it through each person, and the way civil services, we can't offer somebody else a job down the line until the person ahead of them has either been offered a job or is out of the running.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking is, out of the 38, you chose 4. Am I correct?
No, that's just 4 that we believe are going to be able to finish the process and quit their jobs that they're at now. Those 4 would be able to go to the academy in April.
But did 38 pass the civil service exam, but then they have to submit their background information. They have to take
Yes, sir.
polygraph. There's a lot of things. People get washed out through the process, especially on the background. So of those 38, we may be only lucky to hire 5 or 6, or right now we think 4. And that is not at all uncommon because of the rigors of the requirements, and especially there are criteria which will disqualify a candidate in their background. And so that's where a lot of them typically wash out, is in the background testing.
So is that the normal percentage? I mean, when you have 38, a single-digit percentage is what to be expected?
60%. The 60% failure rate is what, over, as long as I've been in law enforcement, that's typical.
We are
and we're, and we've also started a tutoring program, which not all of them came to.
But you mean 60% failure of the test, or I'm talking about the 38?
No, I'm sorry, 60% failure on the test.
Okay, but no, I was addressing what Mr. Hugman was saying about the background process, that we got the washouts. I guess we got 38 people.
Correct.
And we're expecting 34 of them to wash out.
No, sir. Just to this point, because the background process takes so long, and you can't, if we had 10 investigators, you could do 10 background checks or background investigations, but you couldn't hire number 10 until 1 through 9 either had been offered a job or were out of the process. So it takes time, and since February the 16th, these 4 are the only ones that we've been able to offer a job to this point in the process.
So it may be more.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
sir. There,
that's-
yeah, there's a possibility there could be more.
Okay. Okay, and so, but we'll keep vetting those 38 till we realize that
Yes, sir.
there's nobody else to
Yes,
pick
sir.
from.
And once we get to the end of the 38, then we'll post another
Another
test.
test, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
The 2018 annual report was completed, and it's been posted on the police department website. And we'd like to thank everyone that was involved in the production of that, especially volunteer coordinator Randy Cosby, crime prevention officer Doug Sisk, and crime analyst Stacy Trevino. On February the 22nd, Sergeants Joe Emmett and Nathan Roach graduated from the 127th School of Police Supervision. This school is provided by the Institute of Law Enforcement Administration, and it offers a one-of-a-kind, month-long mid-level police management course, which focuses on the transitioning from street-level police work to management roles, and concentrates on the personal and social aspects of that transition. Chief Brown was participated in the 12th Texas Police Chief Leadership Series Focus Group, which helps to develop the training curriculum for police chiefs. That leadership series is sponsored by the Law Enforcement Management Institute of Texas and was held in Huntsville. Chief Brown also was invited to celebrate Black History Month. Chief Brown was invited to celebrate Black History Month with students from Smith Elementary. Also, Assistant Chief Lavigny helped promote Reading Across America by reading to some of the students at Smith. The police department held its third Advanced Citizen Police Academy class on February the 26th and had 50 participants in attendance. For January and February, we had 2 use of force incidents. Both of those incidents were reviewed and found to be within department policy and lawful. We had no vehicle pursuits. We had a total of 5 complaints. 2 of those complaints were internal complaints of policy violations, which are still under investigation. 2 were policy violations that were sustained, and 1 was an internal complaint of excessive speed, which was also sustained. In January, we held 6 community meetings and fostered 387 partnerships. In February, we also had 6 meetings, and that had 160 partnerships.
Community meetings?
I'm sorry?
Where they hold the community meetings?
I'm not sure where they held those.
I'll
That's
tell you
something I
one.
can check on and-
I'll tell you one. I was in that one on the left.
Okay.
That's the Lions Club, and that's Detective Chad Berger.
Yes, sir.
I was going to mention this, just timing is right. Detective Chad Berger gave an excellent presentation on skimming, the use of skimming
forms of
machines and
fraud.
devices in our city and outside of our city, and it was so powerful, so impactful to me in terms of understanding how letters, I mean, our post office, you never want to use those boxes that are on the street at our post office. I always wondered why the top lip of them was out of proportion, and he explained it's because people have stuck devices in there, shoved it up in to open that, so they put their arm down and they can take letters out of those external mailboxes at our post office. He showed us devices on skimming. He showed us devices on pads.
Are you teaching us how to be?
I'm telling you what Detective Berger taught us, and after that, my wife and I went and took out a post office box. I'm serious. It was that impactful in terms of what he is aware of, and criminal activity with credit cards and in mail fraud.
And that was,
so-
I think that was so well received that I believe he's been asked to do that possibly, I think at a town hall meeting.
Yeah, I
So-
talked to Mr. Hugman about it, and it's, this whole community, it's like, yeah, town hall would be exceptional, because our citizens need to know that, I went to Costco to get gas. What did I do? I grabbed onto that device. I shook it like he recommended. And so now that you can go to any ATM pad that you go to, or even a pad in Kroger or anything else, they're putting keypads over the actual keypad. So when you enter your code, your PIN, it's captured. It's not going to the bank.
And different types of fraud is, I mean, it's very prevalent.
It's scary stuff.
It's very prevalent.
You know, so I commend him for his competency and frightening me out of my pants. Really, it's serious, serious stuff. So, yeah, Chief, we need to get him out.
Since you asked the other picture there, I do know what that is. That was at City Credit Union, and it was just showing their appreciation for the first responders. I don't know if you can really tell. There are bottles of water there on the table and boxes of donuts. We didn't eat any of the donuts. So just
no stigma attached.
I promise. So for the Part 1 crimes, due to the seriousness, frequency of occurrence, pervasiveness across the USA, and likelihood of being reported, the FBI chose these listed crimes as Part 1 crimes. In reviewing these offenses, our crime analysts found an obvious increase of 36% in the category of theft, and determined that the increase could be due to several factors. One of these factors is the fact that over the last month or so, loss prevention unit at Winco has stepped up their loss prevention activities, and which has increased the number of shoplifting offenses that they have caught and called us to. Second is the lottery ticket thefts. Those have increased, and during these investigations, it's been discovered, or we've discovered that a majority of these lottery ticket displays are sitting right there on the counter, right next to the register. It's easy to go in and swipe it and run out the door. So our crime prevention officer, Doug Sisk, has asked that these stores move these displays away from that within reach area and maybe to a counter behind, where they stand and so forth. Another factor is there have been several firearms stolen from vehicles, something that we obviously never want to hear or see happen. Because a theft of a firearm from a vehicle, if we classify it that way, it is a felony instead of classifying it as a burglary of a motor vehicle, which is a Class B misdemeanor. Like I said, there have been several of those, which has also caused that theft category to rise.
Have those occurred in people's residences or at
Different places, parking lots, commercial parking lots, driveways. A majority of them are usually commercial parking lots, where they don't want to take they don't want to or can't take their weapon into wherever they're going. It happens everywhere. We try to encourage people to find some other way to secure that, and it's even though it's hidden somewhere, if somebody wants to break into a car, they're probably going to find it if they have enough time.
So is it presumed that the owners of those vehicles are CHL holders?
That I can't tell you. I don't know the answer to that.
Through the investigation, does it ever come out that this was a non-licensed weapon?
Yeah,
not in a car.
It's not. That's not always something that's that may be in a report. I mean, you can have a weapon in your car without having a concealed handgun license, as long as it's secured the proper way. Well, I say secured the proper way, as long as it's,
Yeah.
not obvious.
Lieutenant, you said that it was did you say 36% increase from January to February?
Yes, sir.
Now, was there an increase from December to January, or do you know that?
No, sir, I don't know that. That's something I have to research and get back to you on.
Yeah, I would like to know that.
I did look at, just to tell you, kind of jog my memory, I did look at the Winco thefts, and I don't recall seeing any, normally they're called in as theft suspect in custody. I don't recall seeing any of those in December, and that's part of why, we believe they've ramped up their activities, and the simple fact that we know that they're working more during the day. I believe they're no longer open at night. They're not 24-hour anymore.
So was it isolated to Winco? I mean, or does Kroger and Tom Thumb have the same kind of loss prevention?
They do have loss prevention, but they don't seem to have as many calls.
As Winco?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have no idea, honestly. Now, I don't believe, and this is just my honest belief from having taken calls at Kroger before. I don't believe they have somebody there as often as Winco does now, and that just may be a reason why. They may not have somebody there every day or all day. Loss prevention specifically, to be able to watch, people that are concealing items and. Right. Tom Thumb also, my knowledge is a majority of the time when somebody calls in a shoplifting, it's a manager or somebody like that. It's not specifically loss prevention. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Just the shoplifting itself. So from, I believe, the most recent council meeting, I believe it was asked that these offenses be broken down by council district. So if you can read, that's kind of small. In January, as far as thefts go, since that was a prevailing increase, in thefts, District 1, there were 7, District 2, 5, District 3 had 9, District 4, 6, and District 5, 13. That's, yes, sir, in the theft category. When you go to February, then, there's a noticeable increase. 3 in District 1, 1 in District 2, 13 there, 19 in District 3. That was a big jump up 10. And that's the Winco. District 4 had 13, where it had 6 the month before, and then District 5 had 18, where it had 13 the month before. Well, a majority of this increase, we believe, is Winco, lottery tickets, and then the I don't say the reclassification of thefts from the firearms, but just the classification of that as a theft and not a BMV or burglary of a motor vehicle. Winco's in 3. that's it. Any other I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll wait. You're sitting this too, so I love the, city manager, I love to have this. I know they like to present to us, but unfortunately I didn't wear my glasses tonight, so thank you, Councilman. I'd love to have this presentation as they're presenting for us to look at versus getting it afterwards. Is that, any reason why we couldn't do that? Okay, thank you. Was there the accumulated
The whole
total?
thing or just the maps? The maps like that, to where you can see them better?
Yeah, I'm just saying the whole presentation. I know we get them after the meeting, but we could ask any questions after the meetings. But my question, was there a cumulative total up there? I didn't.
No.
Well, their total for January was 103 of all offenses and Part 1 crimes.
What was 4?
And then February was 109.
He didn't add up, he didn't add them up by district.
You know, like I'll do it when I get it. All right, thanks.
Oh, no, sir.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, I know I requested that. Thank you, and thank Chief Brown for
Yes, sir.
for doing that. I've been wanting to see that for a very long time, so thank you for doing
Yes,
that.
sir. Thank you.
Ms. Jamison?
Yes, we had a police association study that was done reviewing the police department.
I'm sorry, I'm just answering a question here.
We had a police association, remember we hired them to come and do a study?
The IACP study, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we have gotten the results of that. Chief Brown has been working with his command staff on the recommendations, and I've asked him to put that into a format that we can track the objectives and the goals, and I've talked to him about giving a report to the council on that study. So yes, we're working on that. We'll be bringing that to y'all.
Okay, I'm curious as to that outcome.
And again, I know I just thanked the sergeant, right? Lieutenant for that.
That's all right.
I can't see all
That's
that.
okay.
But let me also thank the city
I get
manager,
called
because
worse
I
things.
know that from that last page that was just displayed, I've really been asking that for, even since the first time I was on council, and this is the first time that has been delivered. So thank you for walking that through to help us, for us to see that. But I love to see it every time. Thank you.
Love to.
Yeah.
Crime?
No, I love to see the chart.
Okay, love all around. The meeting is adjourned at 10:07. Thank you.